I was clearly training in martial arts. How I became a being with supernatural powers. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 226, Grudges. After a while, dozens of human heads reappeared in the old tree. These evil heads were stained with green and smelly juice, with all kinds of weird and absurd expressions on their faces, and they kept making all kinds of weird and sharp sounds. This tree is really disgusting. Qin Yang looked at the human heads growing out of the trunk again, and his tone was cold. I asked about the origin of this old tree today. According to the servants of Fu Heihao, this tree was planted by Fu Heihao himself. Shen Sangxiu said in a deep voice. No wonder it is so weird. Qin Yang said lightly. Boom. The next moment, the old tree rose from the ground, and strange and twisted human faces appeared on the rough bark surface. Qin Yang seemed to have seen these faces before. They seemed to be the servants, guards, and maids of Fu Heihao's mansion. There were so many faces that he couldn't count them. The size of the old tree was also growing wildly, becoming more than 5 meters high. The branches and leaves kept falling off, and the trunk kept extending branches, like withered and dark ghost claws. Qin Yang, put aside our grudges first, and kill this ghost tree first. Shen Sangxiu said in a deep voice. The aura emitted by this ghost tree is too gloomy and terrifying. Even he feels great pressure. Okay. Qin Yang did not refuse. Now this ghost tree looks really tricky. Hehe. The heads hanging on the branches of the ghost tree kept making strange noises. These sounds were sharp and piercing, making people's eardrums hurt abnormally. But Qin Yang used the Bidao Zen Wu Yuan Qi to directly seal his ears and isolate the sharp laughter. The next moment, the branches on the ghost tree grew wildly, as if they turned into a dozen ghost claws, and attacked Qin Yang and Shen Sangxiu. Qin Yang's eyes were cold, and he held the Hanyu knife with both hands, and quickly slashed out the cold knife light. Clang. When the Hanyu knife chopped into the ghost claws of the tree branches, sparks burst out fiercely. This tree branch ghost claw is harder than steel. Even the Hanyu knife can only cut shallow marks. Clang clang clang. Qin Yang danced the Hanyu knife wildly, as if a dragon was raging in the water. And those tree branch ghost claws were densely packed, as if they wanted to entangle and restrain the dragon. The fight was extremely fierce. Shen Sangxiu did the same. He waved the white jade flute, making a series of crisp sounds, and kept hitting these tree branch ghost claws, making clang 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 sounds, like forging iron. Even though Shen Sangxiu had used all his strength, he could only make dents one by one. Boom boom boom. For a while, sand and rocks flew in the garden, and many plants were damaged. Cut. Qin Yang suddenly burst out, and the Bidao Zen Wu Yuan Qi exuded a sharp sense of death. From a distance, it seemed as if a platinum dragon was entangled in the Hanyu knife, and it was cut fiercely. The knife light was unstoppable, carrying the intention of suppressing evil, suddenly cutting off 5 or 6 tree branches and claws, and fiercely slashing into the ghost tree. Boom. It hurts. The human face on the surface of the ghost tree screamed, and then was instantly annihilated by the knife light. A terrifying knife mark appeared in the tree body, and black and rotten blood continued to flow out. The next moment, the ground where Qin Yang was suddenly sunken, and the dark and dense tree whiskers stretched out like lightning, and suddenly wrapped around Qin Yang's feet. Hehe. The human head hanging on the ghost tree laughed strangely, and rushed towards Qin Yang like a swarm of bees. Qin Yang. Seeing this, Shen Sangxiu was about to help. No need. Qin Yang roared and directly activated the unparalleled strength. The surging blood and ki made him stronger. At the same time, the 3 flowers gathered at the top of the head. Boom. Bidao Zen Wu Yuan Qi rolled up in his body like a tsunami, forming a black tortoise beast with a dragon head, a turtle body and a snake tail on his body. Human Qi. Bang, bang, bang. The dozens of evil heads hit the Hunyuan Qi, making a loud noise. But the Hunyuan Qi, blessed by multiple magical powers, Yuan Qi, and Qi and blood, was too tough, and was not broken. In the end, these evil ghost heads could only open their fangs and bite it. But how could Qin Yang sit and wait for death? He roared wildly, and his right leg suddenly activated the power of the Wu Liang heavy whip and raised it fiercely. Boom! Exclamation mark. A series of dark and tough tree roots were suddenly pulled out from deep underground. Puff Qin Yang swung the Hanyu knife with his right hand and cut it off directly. With his left hand, he hit the Wu Liang heavy whip and swept it out, blasting the evil heads away crazily. Blink of an eye. The fatal crisis was resolved by Qin Yang. After he cut off the tree roots wrapped around his feet, he whistled and slashed at the ghost tree with a knife. At this time, Shen Sangxiu also dealt with the tree branches and claws and attacked from the side. He also did not hold back, bursting the essence of his 5 internal organs, and the vitality surged. The jade flute extended a sword energy of more than half a meter and quickly stabbed the ghost tree. Swish, swish, swish. Shen Sangxiu's attack speed was extremely fast. In the blink of an eye, the ghost tree was pierced with thousands of holes, and there were dense holes. Qin Yang put the cold abyss knife back to his back, and the strength in his body burst out, and his fists hit the ghost tree fiercely. He felt that it was more refreshing and powerful to deal with such a big guy with 2 fists. Boom. Dragon elephant rampant dance. Qin Yang completely ignored the biting of those evil heads, and his fists danced wildly, each punch heavier than the other. The bark of the ghost tree was constantly cracked, and the faces of people screamed sharply. But this scream made Qin Yang even more angry. His eyes were fierce, and his strength increased a bit. You know, his vitality contains the power to suppress evil, and every punch can cause great damage to the ghost tree. After a dozen punches, Qin Yang roared and condensed his fist force in his right fist, as if condensing billions of divine power. Dragon elephant millions of destroyed mountains. Boom. With a loud bang, the ghost tree more than 5 meters high was directly blasted through by Qin Yang's punch. Suddenly, Qin Yang felt a gloomy murderous intent coming from behind. He suddenly drew out the Hanyu knife and chopped it down with his backhand. With a clang, a dark sword light came and was slashed by the Hanyu knife. The 2 figures suddenly separated. It's you. Qin Yang was a little surprised. The person who attacked him was a long-haired man holding a Yuhua sword with a calm face. It was the owner of Piaoyu Villa, Shen Yu. Qin Yang, it's time to settle our grievances. Shen Yu looked at Qin Yang and said lightly, grudges? What grievances do I have with you? Qin Yang narrowed his eyes. What do you think? Shen Yu smiled. I think Qin Yang thought for a while. There are only a few people who have grudges against me. Most of them were killed by me. There are only a few people or forces that were not killed by me. You should be someone who stands on the side of Fu Heihao Mansion. Either the Wengxin Temple or the Blackfish Building. Could it be that you are the first owner of the Blackfish Building? Shen Yu was a little surprised. I didn't expect you to be able to make a connection. No way. Who told me that I have few enemies? Qin Yang grinned. You killed so many people in my Blackfish Building. This time, it's time to send you to death. Shen Yu looked at Qin Yang with a grim look. On the other side, Shen Sangxiu had no time to care about the grievances between Shen Yu and Qin Yang and was fighting fiercely with the ghost tree. Chapter 227 Outbreak. Bang, bang, bang. Qin Yang had severely damaged the ghost tree before, so Shen Sangxiu was not under much pressure to face it alone. He was naturally not as violent as Qin Yang. His body movements were graceful and ghostly, constantly dodging the attacks of the ghost tree. At the same time, the white jade flute in his hand continuously shot out wisps of sword energy, cutting the ghost tree. However, this fighting style was destined to not quickly resolve the battle, and it would take a long time. On the other side, Qin Yang and Shen Yu's auras were entangled and collided crazily. Boom. A pale lightning flashed suddenly. Raindrops fell from the sky. It seems that even God is helping me. Shen Yu smiled slightly. Really? It's a pity that you are too useless, and God's help is useless. Qin Yang disagreed. Shen Yu narrowed his eyes. The next moment, his figure flashed over. In Qin Yang's perception, Shen Yu seemed to disappear. No. It should be integrated into the raindrops. Dense and cold sword intent attacked from all directions. Qin Yang already knew how to deal with this kind of martial arts. That is to feel the sword intent with the heart. Qin Yang closed his eyes and listened to the dark rainy night with his heart. Suddenly, he seemed to see a rainflower sword suddenly crossing the rainy night and stabbing at him from the side. Clang. The cold abyss knife then made a sound. This sound was like the roar of a dragon, bursting with cold and sharp energy, as if the dragon waved its claws and slashed out fiercely. With a clang, the heavy slashes in the rainflower sword caused a thick mist to rise. I didn't expect you to be able to react. Shen Yu was a little surprised. The next moment, the rainflower sword in his hand turned into dozens of cold sword lights, covering Qin Yang. Qin Yang was in a state of unparalleled strength, with 3 flowers gathered at the top of his head, and his blood and energy were violently surging. He immediately swung the cold abyss knife to cut. Clang clang clang. As the cold abyss blade and the rainflower sword continued to collide, the raindrops drifting down from the sky were squeezed and shattered into mist. 5 Kiss to Yuan. Open. Shen Yu roared, and the essence of his 5 internal organs suddenly burst out, greatly enhancing his Fuai Yuan Qi, and making it even more intense and turbulent. The sword light that was originally used suddenly changed from drizzle to heavy rain. In just a moment, it seemed that hundreds of heavy rain sword Qi shot out, and shot towards Qin Yang fiercely. No matter how fierce the sword light was, this sword Qi was too dense and fierce, and Qin Yang had no way to completely block it. Puff, puff. Puff Yuan Qi only lasted a dozen times before it was cut by the heavy rain sword Qi. Sword marks continued to appear in Qin Yang's body. Rain, Shen Yu shouted in a low voice, and the rainflower sword instantly turned into a white transparent sword Qi and stabbed Qin Yang's heart. This sword Qi was hidden among many heavy rain sword Qi and was difficult to be discovered. Shen Yu wanted to use this sword to completely end Qin Yang. But Qin Yang was very focused and did not become agitated because of the sword energy that cut his body. When the white transparent sword energy attacked, he sensed it. Want to kill me? Qin Yang's face was ferocious, holding the cold abyss knife with both hands, ignoring any sword energy, and fiercely slashed forward with an extremely fierce and heartless slash. The fierce and sharp aura suddenly spread in the garden. Bang! Shen Yu was forced back by the sword. Qin Yang gasped. The dense sword marks on his body were overflowing with blood, which was very bloody. Qin Yang, I wonder how many swords you can still withstand. In a while, you will be chopped into pieces by me. Shen Yu grinned. Really? Then you think too simply. Qin Yang shook his head slightly. The next moment, he exerted force on his feet and rushed towards Shen Yu fiercely. The cold and sharp knife light flowed at a very fast speed, instantly tearing through the rain and slashing towards Shen Yu quickly. It's useless. Shen Yu shook his head slightly. He flashed, dodging the flash of the knife and blending into the rainy night. The next moment, thousands of torrential sword Qi shot at Qin Yang frantically. Qin Yang swung his sword and chopped wildly, constantly strangling these torrential sword Qi. But there were too many sword Qi, making him like a trapped beast, constantly being cut by sword Qi. But he could only roar in anger, and there was no way out. Give up. You are not my opponent at all. Shen Yu's voice came out. Will it work? Can you kill me? Qin Yang laughed wildly. Even though he was cut with dense wounds on his body, it was nothing to him. It was just a little flesh pain, not deep into the bone marrow. If the sword Qi covering the sea wanted to penetrate, it would be immediately offset by Bidao Zen Wuzu and Gong. With his physical strength, it would take hundreds of swords to be considered a serious injury. Really? Shen Yu snorted coldly, and the sword Qi shot at Qin Yang was obviously more violent. Hualala, the rain in the sky also became heavier at this moment, and it was pouring down. Qin Yang could no longer distinguish which was rain and which was sword energy. His blood was constantly torn apart by the sword energy and splashed in this dark rainy night. Whoosh! A ray of transparent sword energy was silent, as if it merged with the rainstorm, and shot silently at Qin Yang's back. Qin Yang's left hand suddenly whipped the boundless heavy whip and hit it back fiercely. With a bang. His left hand was like a heavy whip, and it lashed hard on the Yuhua sword. At the moment, when the mist collapsed and spread, a figure was smashed out by Qin Yang. Can't bear it anymore. Qin Yang grinned. He was waiting for the moment when Shen Yu showed up again. His eyes were quickly rendered black and lost the whites of his eyes. A large amount of Qi and blood circulated in his body, outlining the mysterious Yinfu. Yinfu opened. When the Yinfu opened, the blood and energy in Qin Yang's body suddenly surged, and his muscles and blood vessels were ferocious like a python. He swung the Hanua knife with his big hand and slashed towards Shen Yu. This knife was too fast and too fierce. It was like a dragon entering the sea, extremely ferocious. Shen Yu's expression changed drastically. He didn't expect Qin Yang to be able to explode. The explosive power and speed of this knife were completely beyond Shen Yu's imagination. His eyes were fierce, and he raised the Yuhua sword and stabbed Qin Yang's eyes with one sword. Qin Yang turned his head and dodged, and the knife light still swept towards Shen Yu's waist and abdomen. Shen Yu seized the opportunity and slapped out with his left hand, hitting the Hanyu knife accurately. Whoosh! A heavy whip wrapped in a fine mist came fiercely. It kicked Shen Yu's calf heavily. Bang! Shen Yu's body protecting vitality on the surface like water ripples was kicked out by Qin Yang's kick. Ah! Shen Yu screamed. His calf bone was broken by Qin Yang's kick, and he was in great pain. Let's see how you can hide. Qin Yang grinned. His target was Shen Yu's shin bone. The opponent's swordsmanship was hard to figure out, but as long as the opponent's movements were restricted, the power of this swordsmanship would naturally be greatly reduced. Damn it. Shen Yu endured the severe pain in his leg and wanted to dodge and retreat. But how could Qin Yang let the opponent leave so easily? He roared wildly, and the cold and sharp bead Ao Zen Wu Yuan Qi bloomed in the Hanyu knife and slashed towards Shen Yu fiercely. Extremely evil heartless slash. Swish. In the deep rainy night, it seemed as if a white and golden dragon appeared, holding the remaining soldiers in its mouth, and it was ferocious and monstrous. Chapter 228, Funeral Hall. Shen Sangxiu, who was fighting with the ghost tree, heard the dragon roar. His face trembled, and he couldn't help but look back. In the deep rainy night, a white gold sharp knife light swept across the night sky. Along with the roar of the dragon, a figure was cut in half. Puff. Blood spread with the knife energy and fell in every corner of the garden. Shen Sangxiu looked surprised. He originally thought that Qin Yang could hold Shen Yu back, and thank God. But he never thought that Shen Yu was cut in half by Qin Yang's knife. Puff. Shen Yu's upper body fell to the ground, spitting blood. I didn't expect it. Shen Yu looked at Qin Yang, who was walking slowly with a knife, and laughed miserably. I've said it all. It's useless for God to help you. Qin Yang said lightly. Qin Yang, you can kill me, but you can't kill the Marquis. You will come to see me soon. Shen Yu laughed miserably. I've heard too many such words. Qin Yang didn't take it seriously and cut off Shen Yu's head with a knife. The first owner of the Blackfish building died. In total, the first, second, and third owners all died under Qin Yang's blade. With the death of Shen Yu, the Blackfish building should soon be destroyed. After Qin Yang killed Shen Yu, he rushed to the ghost tree again. For the ghost tree, Qin Yang was a natural nemesis. The evil suppressing power contained in his body was too powerful for the ghost tree. He and Shen Sangxiu joined forces, and after dozens of moves, he chopped the ghost tree into pieces with a knife. Accompanied by a loud bang. Boom. The ghost tree suddenly exploded with a lot of rotten black flesh and blood, polluting everything in the garden. It stinks. Qin Yang covered his nose. Shen Yu and the ghost tree. I'm afraid they came to attack us on purpose. Shen Sangxiu came back to his senses. We should find Director Leng and the others first. Qin Yang took out a few pills and swallowed them to restore his blood. Of course, the magical power of running back to the sea was also running, quickly restoring his vitality. Shen Sangxiu also understood this truth. There were so many masters in the Fuhei Marquis mansion, and it became so strange. It was impossible for the two of them to kill it alone. The only chance was to join Leng Kang, Zhao Dingshan, and the masters of the family. The two left the garden together. We should get close to the morning hall. It is the most obvious place in the Fuhei Marquis mansion. If I were Leng Kang, I would also go to look for people nearby. Shen Sangxiu suggested. Because the reason why the Fuhei Marquis mansion became so strange was because of the morning hall. Okay. Qin Yang thought it was feasible. The location of the morning hall was also easy to confirm. Because even if the Fuhei Marquis mansion had strange changes, the sound made by the Master of Salvation had never stopped. Just move towards the source of those strange sounds. Just when Qin Yang and Shen Sangxiu passed a courtyard, they both stopped. Several corpses appeared in their eyes. It's the Tao family. Shen Sangxiu looked at the broken bodies and said calmly. Qin Yang squatted down and was about to check the death of these bodies. The body suddenly jumped up from the ground and rushed towards Qin Yang fiercely. Qin Yang knocked it to the ground with a punch and then stepped on it fiercely. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Shen Sanxiu attacked at the same time, waving the white jade flute, strangling the bodies. I didn't expect these bodies to become evil spirits, Qin Yang said lightly. Their blood, flesh, and essence were all devoured and absorbed. Shen Sanxiu said softly, well, I don't know if it was absorbed by that ghost tree or by some strange thing. Qin Yang nodded. The two left here quickly. After half an incense stick, they finally came to the vicinity of the morning hall. Be careful. The sound of the scripture for salvation is very strange. Qin Yang frowned slightly. As soon as he approached the morning hall more than 10 meters away, he felt that his mind was greatly disturbed. For example, some strange and chaotic emotions may appear, or some absurd sounds may make people feel uncomfortable and produce a fearful and horrified emotion. Shen Sanxiu also sensed this emotion and quickly sealed his eardrums with his vital energy. At this moment, Qin Yang saw a figure rushing out of the building complex on the left. Zheng Yuanshi, the head of the Zheng family, had blood on his left arm and looked solemn. He soon saw Qin Yang and Shen Sanxiu and was stunned at first, and then quickly came over. However, he did not get too close and stood at a distance with a vigilant look. Shen Sanxiu seemed to know Zheng Yuanshi's concerns and gently emitted a wisp of aura. Zheng Yuanshi felt relieved after feeling this aura. Qin Yang made a gesture, and the three of them came to a place where the morning hall would not interfere, and then they communicated. Now the Fuhei Marquis mansion is going to swallow us all. Let's put aside the past grudges first. Shen Sanxiu made his words clear first. No problem. Zheng Yuanshi nodded heavily. Then he talked about his experience again. I was originally practicing in the room, and suddenly a figure appeared by the window and led me out. I recognized that figure. It should be Tanning. I originally thought that she had something confidential to talk to me about, so she didn't disturb anyone and quietly went out. But when I chased her out, Tanning was gone. In desperation, I returned to the courtyard, but found that all my family members were gone. Zheng Yuanshi said coldly. After that, he was attacked repeatedly. In order to find his companions, he had to take the risk to find them. He happened to meet Qin Yang and Shen Sanxiu. Qin Yang was thoughtful. He felt that Zhao Dingshan should have been tricked out by a similar trick. Who? The three of them turned their heads almost at the same time and looked at a dark place. It's me. Len Kang's figure emerged from the shadows. He seemed to have just fought a big battle with someone and had a lot of injuries on his body. Len Kang, who hurt you? Shen Sanxiu was very surprised. The monk Kungsin from the Wengxin temple. This guy's also lurking in the Fuhei Marquis's mansion. I fought with him for a long time before I found a chance to leave. Len Kang shook his head. The monk Kungsin, young Marquis Li Chen. Qin Yang recited 3 names. These 3 people should be the last ones guarding the morning hall. Are there only 4 of us? Zheng Yuanshi frowned. He felt that the 4 of them might not be able to beat the 3 on the opposite side. Not to mention that there was also Qin Yang. Because Zheng Yuanshi didn't know that Qin Yang had just killed the owner of the Blackfish Tower, he felt that Qin Yang was at most a warrior with 3 flowers gathered at the top of his head. Even if he was stronger, he couldn't compete with a warrior with 5 ki converging to the origin. Wait a little longer, there must be others coming here. Shen Sanxiu shook his head. Not long after, another figure appeared. Zhao Dingshan, the leader of the Xianyang sect, appeared covered in blood. After seeing Qin Yang and the other 4, he was alert at first, and then relaxed after confirming that they were not evil spirits. After some questioning, he found out that he was led out by a black shadow just like Zheng Yuanshi. The only difference between him and Zheng Yuanshi was that the black shadow he saw looked a lot like Len Kang. Chapter 229 Impact. With the appearance of Zhao Dingshan, everyone looked more relaxed. In this way, from the surface, they also have some advantages in numbers. But Fuhei Hao Mansion definitely has a hidden trump card. It is hard to say who is better or worse in the situation. After a while, no one appeared. Even Tanning, the former deputy director of the Zunshan division and the head of the Tao family, did not show up. It seems that there are really only 5 of us left. Len Kang said in a deep voice. That's enough. Shen Sanxiu said lightly. At this time, of course, we can't say discouraging words. From my observation, the weird source of this Fuhei Hao mansion comes from the morning hall. We should be able to leave Fu Heihao Mansion as long as we destroy the Morning Hall. Remember, our goal is to leave Fu Heihao Mansion, not to fight with the other party to the end. As long as we can spread the situation here, it will be enough for us. Leng Kang reminded. Everyone nodded. They also understood this truth. Because there is still one most important person in Fu Heihao Mansion who has not appeared yet. Fu Heihao. From the current information, this Marquis is definitely faking his death. This person, looking at the entire Yangningshao city, only Song Yechen can match him. Then charge into the Morning Hall and destroy its barrier. Zhao Dingshan said coldly. He, Leng Kang and Zheng Yuanxi were all seriously injured, but now they naturally could not rest. They could only swallow the elixir and sit with their injuries. After the 5 figures reached an agreement, they dispersed and quietly approached the Morning Hall. Qin Yang and Leng Kang acted together, and the two quietly came to the left side of the Morning Hall. Suddenly, Qin Yang pointed to a window. Leng Kang looked, and saw that there was a small hole in the window. He immediately understood that someone must have been here, standing in the corner of the wall, poking a hole, and peeping at the situation inside. And this person is very likely Ma Cheng. Let's take a look at the situation inside first. Leng Kang transmitted the voice. Qin Yang nodded silently. He poked a hole with his finger and looked inside. The Morning Hall was spacious, hung with white silk and white lanterns. A dozen wizards in tall hats and white robes lowered their heads, surrounded a red coffin, and kept chanting scriptures, shaking various magic tools in their hands. There was a thick layer of blood plasma on the ground, and many corpses were lying there. Qin Yang saw Li Chen pulling a person to the coffin. It was an old woman, with a weak breath and very serious injuries. It was Towning, the head of the Tao family. Reborn with human spirit blood. Li Chen chanted a strange spell, took out a dagger, and cut Towning's throat fiercely. It was like killing a chicken and bleeding it. Li Chen pressed Towning's head, letting the blood gush out wildly, and drip into the red coffin. Zzzz. The red coffin was quite evil. The blood dripped on the surface of the coffin, and was immediately absorbed, flashing a faint red light. Soon, Towning's blood was shining, his eyes opened wide, but he was lifeless. Li Chen casually threw Towning's body on the ground, and licked the blood-stained dagger with his tongue. How is it? Have you seen enough? Don't worry, you don't have to worry. I will cut your necks, and bleed you out. Li Chen said with a very perverted smile on his face. Humph. Do you deserve it? Zhao Dingshan no longer hid, and appeared directly at the door of the Morning Hall. Zhao Dingshan, you were beaten by me just now, and fled in panic. I didn't expect you to dare to show up. Li Chen grinned. So this time, I'm here for revenge. Zhao Dingshan suddenly burst out with a burning breath, and the golden sun energy wrapped around his body, like a golden furnace. Li Chen laughed strangely, and the copper coins wrapped in his hand suddenly flew out, like a fairy scattering flowers. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. The copper coins became sharp and sinister, and the speed was extremely fast. Zhao Dingshan shouted loudly, circulated the heavenly sun energy, and suddenly hit out with both palms. Qin Yang Qi. Boom. A blazing golden palm was formed in an instant, raising a wave of flames, and hitting Li Chen fiercely. The heat of the golden palm even melted and burned the copper coins that attacked. Just when Li Chen wanted to circulate his energy to fight back. Boom. The windows on both sides broke instantly. Qin Yang and Leng Kang rushed in from the left window. Shen Sangxiu and Zheng Yuanxi rushed out from the right window. The 4 of them did not hold back at all, and all launched the strongest attack, hitting Li Chen fiercely. In an instant, the Morning Hall was like a huge bellows, stirring up a huge wind noise. This was the movement formed by the entanglement and compression of several energy. Leng Kang, the grudge between this poor monk and you should also be settled. A mage in a white robe and a tall hat in the corner shouted loudly, and the energy was stirred up, tearing the white robe and blowing the tall hat away. It was the abbot of Wengxin Temple, Monk Kungsin. His withered body grew wildly, his arms turned into thick ghost claws, and he rushed towards Leng Kang like a golem. At the same time, a terrifying figure appeared from the depths of the Morning Hall. It was the young Marquis Qi Yuan. He had a domineering aura, holding a halberd, like a peerless warrior, with a terrifying murderous aura. Become Grandpa's sacrifice. Qi Yuan's tone was stiff and cold, and he suddenly rushed towards Shen Sangxiu and Zheng Yuanxi. Director Leng, I will deal with this old monk, and you go help Deputy Chief Zhao deal with Li Chen. After Qin Yang finished speaking, before Leng Kang could reply, he roared wildly and slashed at the monk Kungsin with an extremely evil heartless slash. With a bang, a huge force came. Qin Yang was actually blasted out by the monk Kungsin's claw. Qin Yang. When the monk Kungsin saw Qin Yang, he was also extremely resentful. It was Qin Yang and Liu Yun who sneaked into the back mountain and took away the ghost seed Buddha statue. The monk Kungsin rushed out of the morning hall, thinking of killing Qin Yang first. Leng Kang saw this, but did not chase him out. He chose to believe in Qin Yang's strength and joined Zhao Dingshan to kill Li Chen. Boom! Exclamation mark. On the other side, Qi Yuan waved the halberd. His power was terrifying, as if a ghost had descended to the world, suppressing Shen Sangxiu and Zheng Yuanxi, so that they could not fight back. As for those mages in tall hats and white robes, they were still chanting strange scriptures and shaking the magic weapons in their hands, unaffected by anything. Outside the morning hall, the moment the monk Kungsin flew out, a sharp and cold platinum knife light suddenly attacked. It was like a dragon coming out of the sea, piercing the chest of the monk Kungsin. The monk Kungsin continuously hit out his huge claws and slammed heavily on the Hanyuan knife. 2 clangs. Qin Yang was forced back again. The power is quite strong. Qin Yang's eyes were excited. Qin Yang, I will tear you alive in a moment. Monk Kungsin roared. Okay. Come on. Qin Yang laughed. The strength of monk Kungsin made him even more excited. The previous fight with the Blackfish Tower Master was intense enough, but it didn't make him feel refreshed, and there was no such exhilarating life and death fight. Because the swordsmanship of the Blackfish Tower Master Shenyu was more bizarre and changeable. But monk Kungsin was different. Qin Yang preferred this kind of crazy close combat. Puff. The next moment, Qin Yang activated the 3 flowers gathering on the top of the head in the strong and mighty, and the moment his body grew in size, he rushed towards Kungsin fiercely. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 230 Evil Thoughts. Boom. This time, Qin Yang was no longer forced back by the monk Kungsin. He swung the cold abyss blade and fought with him quickly. The evil dragon swallowing evil blade was used to the extreme, and the murderer Sora burst out crazily. The muscles of the monk Kungsin were bulging with black, like a golem, and his claws swung out with great force. Clang clang clang, both sides were completely crazy, biting and fighting like 2 bloodthirsty beasts. Open and close, no defense. Pure bombardment. Ghost Buddha Rebellion. The monk Kungsin put his hands together, and a dark ghost Buddha appeared behind him, stretching out a dark palm and pressing hard at Qin Yang. Extreme evil heartless slash. Qin Yang held the cold abyss blade tightly with both hands, and a white gold dragon with a broken blade in its mouth appeared behind him, stabbing at the ghost Buddha phantom. Boom. The cold abyss blade, which was wrapped with the power to suppress evil, suddenly cut the ghost Buddha's big palm. The figure of Kungsin monk instantly appeared in front of Qin Yang, and 2 black ghost claws formed a claw shadow that covered the sky. Ding ding ding. Qin Yang grinned, exerted force on his wrist, and the Hanyuan sword turned into a white light and stabbed into the ground. His whole aura suddenly became fierce and domineering, like a terrifying beast ravaging the mountains. Dragon elephant unparalleled dance. Qin Yang punched wildly with both fists, without any rules or routines, just as he wanted. Bang bang bang. The ghost claws of Kungsin monk hit him wildly, tearing the Hunyuan Qi and constantly tearing flesh and blood. Qin Yang's dragon elephant heavy punch hit Kungsin monk wildly, and a strong fist force was blasted out wantonly. The opponent's muscles were broken and cracked. The grey stone slabs on the ground burst and exploded inch by inch, and even bulged and exploded, forming small pits. When the fight was in full swing, Qin Yang suddenly changed his move and hit Kungsin monk's temple with his right elbow. Puff. At the same time, Kungsin monk's ghost claws pierced into his chest. Bang. The 2 figures separated fiercely. Old monk, your nails are quite sharp. Qin Yang looked at the 5 blood holes in his chest and spat out a mouthful of dirty blood. If his muscles and bones were not strong enough, this claw would be enough to take out his heart. Your strength is quite strong. Kungsin Monk's head was hit by Qin Yang's elbow, and half of his skull was broken. The bones burst, and the brain could be seen clearly. Of course, how could I beat you to death otherwise? Qin Yang laughed morbidly. This is the battle he pursues. Fist of flesh, bloody and cruel. You can't do it. Kungsin old monk didn't care about his head being blown up. He put his hands together, and the ghost Buddha behind him became more obvious. Ghost Buddha soul deliverance. Kungsin Monk's face was grim, and the ghost Buddha behind him showed dense black handprints, hitting Qin Yang like a storm. The void was covered by these big handprints, and the air was shattered, as if to break everything. Yin Yang Fujing. Life and death flow. Yin Fu. Open. Qin Yang's eyes were covered by deep black, and his body was wrapped in Bidao Zen Wu Yuan Qi. He suddenly pulled out the Hanua knife, and killed the monk Kungsin. He seemed to have turned into a platinum dragon, rushing and killing wildly. The dark big handprints fell madly, as if to capture him, the evil sea dragon. The knife energy burst out and raged, constantly destroying the big handprints, and many still fell on Qin Yang. Bang bang bang. Qin Yang's body was constantly hit hard, his blood was surging, and his bones were broken. But he was like a wild beast. The more injured he was, the stronger the fierceness in his heart. Kill kill kill. The terrifying and strong thoughts became stronger in Qin Yang's mind, forming a terrifying evil thought. This evil thought was so strong that even the monk Kungsin felt it. He is really born evil. He growled and put his hands together again. Ghost Buddha Wuxin. In an instant, the Ghost Buddha Phantom suddenly raised his right hand and pressed hard on Qin Yang. Evil dragon slash all evil with one thought. At this moment, the strong evil thoughts in Qin Yang's heart were all condensed together, and countless sword techniques were melted to form a sword technique. The strongest sword of the evil dragon swallowing evil sword. The phantom of a dragon with a broken sword in its mouth appeared in the cold abyss sword and turned into a cold light. Wherever the sword light passed, it was like an evil dragon passing through the sky. This evil dragon is lawless and ferocious. Even if it is a Buddha, it will take a bite. What's more, this one is just a ghost Buddha phantom. No. The monk Kungsin also felt the horror of this sword, and roared wildly, increasing the power of the ghost Buddha Wuxin. Puff. The cold and sharp platinum sword light instantly cut the ghost Buddha's hand into pieces. The ghost Buddha phantom let out a wail, and disappeared between heaven and earth. Qin Yang's figure appeared behind the monk Kungsin. I didn't expect it. The monk Kungsin muttered to himself. He put his hands together, sat cross-legged on the ground, and seemed to be about to enter nirvana. Bang! Qin Yang turned around and slashed with a knife. You beast don't deserve to enter nirvana. The monk Kungsin's head was instantly cut off by Qin Yang's knife and fell to the ground. Cough cough cough. Qin Yang also spat out a mouthful of blood. He took out the elixir and swallowed it, holding the Hanua knife, and was about to walk into the morning hall. Boom. With a loud bang, the whole morning hall collapsed. Qi Yuan's tall figure carried the mahogany coffin in one hand. Let's stop for now tonight. We'll decide the winner in a few days. After Qi Yuan left a word, he jumped up with the coffin and disappeared in the ruins of the morning hall. Li Chen's slightly fat figure followed closely behind. Len Kang, Shen Sangxiu and others finally broke free from the ruins and saw the direction where Qi Yuan disappeared, but did not choose to chase him. Why did Qi Yuan suddenly escape? Zheng Yuanshi asked in surprise. He and Shen Sangxiu were almost unable to hold on together. As a result, Qi Yuan suddenly ran away. Because the monk Kungsin was solved, Shen Sangxiu looked at the figure holding a knife in the distance and said lightly. Zheng Yuanshi then discovered Qin Yang in the distance and understood instantly. After Qin Yang solved the monk Kungsin, the strength of both sides changed again. Qi Yuan had no choice but to choose to leave. At the same time, Zheng Yuanshi was shocked to realize that he had underestimated Qin Yang. The strength of the monk Kungsin was so terrifying, but Qin Yang was able to kill him alone. This strength is unfathomable. That's certainly the reason. But I feel there is a deeper level. Len Kang said in a deep voice. Don't worry about it. Fu Heihao Mansion should be back to normal. Let's see if there are any survivors first. Zhao Dingshan said. Several people searched in Fu Heihao Mansion, but no one was found. Qin Yang frowned slightly and suddenly returned to the vicinity of the morning hall. I think the secret may be hidden here, Qin Yang said in a deep voice. He felt that the place where the sacrificial ceremony was held was fixed. Li Chen had sprinkled Tao Ning's blood on the coffin here before, which meant that this should be the place where the ceremony was held. Where could it be? It can be seen clearly here. Zheng Yuanshi frowned. Things on the ground can be seen clearly, but how much filth is there underground? Who knows? Qin Yang looked at the ruins of the morning hall and muttered to himself. Chapter 231 Scroll. After hearing Qin Yang's words, everyone's eyes were fixed on the ruins below the morning hall. They really ignored this place. Qin Yang came to the center of the ruins of the morning hall and dug up the ruins casually. A corpse in a tall hat and white robe appeared in his eyes. It was the mage who performed the ritual before. Qin Yang kicked the corpse away casually and punched the ground fiercely. Boom. The ground suddenly exploded and a large number of cracks appeared. Boom. Qin Yang punched down again. This punch directly smashed through the ground. It's empty below. It seems that it's really under the morning hall. Seeing this scene, everyone's expression changed. Qin Yang looked calm, raised his right fist, and punched again. Boom. The whole ground collapsed and exploded instantly. Qin Yang jumped and dodged in time. Everyone walked over. I saw a dark secret room that Qin Yang smashed out alive. At this time, after a night of fighting, the sky finally brightened. A golden light just fell into the dark secret room. It was as if the netherworld hell emerged from the world. Everyone saw densely packed corpses. These corpses all had their throats cut, their flesh and blood dried up, and their faces were horrible. Shen Sangxiu even saw the body of one of his own nephews. Obviously, all the missing people were in this dark secret room. Go down and take a look. Qin Yang felt that this dark secret room should hide some secrets. Shen Sangxiu had even jumped down while he was talking. Qin Yang also jumped when he saw this situation. Leng Kang and others followed. Not only Shen Sangxiu, Zheng Yuanshi also saw the corpses of his family members, and their expressions were angry. Leng Kang looked at a corpse on the ground and sighed slightly. Ma Cheng had just become the deputy director of the Patrol Sky Division, but now he has become a cold corpse. I'm afraid that, when Ma Cheng came, he never thought that this would be his burial place. Qin Yang ignored these corpses and came to the deepest part of the secret room. There is an altar here, with a spirit tablet enshrined. Fu Hei Hao Ki Yi. Seeing these words, Qin Yang's expression flickered. Is Fu Hei Hao really dead? Zhao Dingshan followed Qin Yang and saw the spirit tablet, looking surprised. If Fu Hei Hao is really dead, then the person who caused so many things may be the young Marquis, Qi Yuan. Not necessarily. Qin Yang saw an ancient scroll next to the altar. The ancient scroll was made of a special material. It didn't look like paper, but more like some kind of animal skin. Is this human skin? Leng Kang also came over at this time. He was surprised when he saw the ancient scroll. Human skin? No wonder I feel that there is so much resentment left in this scroll. Qin Yang was thoughtful. He spread out the human skin scroll. Many obscure small words appeared in everyone's eyes. This is Dacian characters, Leng Kang said in a deep voice. Shen Sangxiu also came over after hearing this. He also has a lot of research on Dacian characters. The other Shore Sutra. This seems to be a kind of cultivation scripture. No, it seems to be a sacrificial ritual. Shen Sangxiu frowned. These words were too obscure. Even he was confused. The questioning heart temple of the other Shore sect itself is a base of the other Shore sect. According to our investigation, after we wiped out the questioning heart temple, the questioning heart temple is the largest base of the other Shore sect in Yangning Prefecture. If I'm not mistaken, Monk Kungsin should be the person in charge of the other Shore sect in Yangning Prefecture. Leng Kang said a lot of information. So this other Shore Sutra should be provided by Monk Kungsin. They want to hold a sacrificial ceremony. Could it be that they want to revive Fu Hei Hao? Shen Sangxiu frowned. I don't think it's that simple. Take this other Shore Sutra back first. Qin Yang put away the other Shore Sutra. He felt that only a research madman like Zhao Zinmo could interpret this scripture. There were too many corpses here. After everyone discussed it, they could only wait until they returned to Yangning Prefecture City before sending people to pull these corpses back. The strange barrier of the Fuhei Marquis mansion had long since dissipated, and everyone was able to walk out easily. They quickly returned to Yangning Prefecture City. On the way, Qin Yang suddenly said, "Where did the BGO heavy cavalry go? Could it be that they were also sacrificed by Qi Yuan?" Qi Yuan did not come back alone, but brought nearly 1,000 BGO heavy cavalry back. According to the situation at the time, the BGO heavy cavalry should have been stationed near the Fuhei Marquis mansion. But now there is no trace of anyone. It's possible the people in the Fuhei Marquis mansion were sacrificed by Qi Yuan. This crazy guy doesn't need these 1,000 BGO heavy cavalry, Shen Sangxiu said in a deep voice. Qin Yang pointed to the ground. There are traces of heavy cavalry trampling on the ground. This shows that they are alive and well, and they were not sacrificed by Qi Yuan. From the direction, they are likely to go to Yangning Prefecture City. Hearing Qin Yang's analysis, several people were shocked, especially Leng Kang, Zheng Yuanxi and Shen Sangxiu. Could it be that Qi Yuan's real target is Yangning Prefecture City? Shen Sangxiu's expression changed drastically. I don't know. Let's go back to Yangning Prefecture City first. Qin Yang shook his head, but he felt in his heart that Qi Yuan was heading for Yangning Prefecture City. Everyone stopped talking and hurried on their way. Several of them were master warriors with great light skills. After an hour, they finally returned to Yangning Prefecture City. When they saw the situation in Yangning Prefecture City, their eyes suddenly darkened. They saw dense black dragon flags fluttering in the wind. A solemn and dark camp appeared in front of the gate of Yangning City, less than 10 miles away. Northern Dragon Army. Leng Kang gritted his teeth and said 3 words. What a good plan. Qi Yi really has a good plan. First, he used his own death to lure us to the Marquis mansion and set up an ambush. Qi Yuan used this name to come back to pay his respects. It seems that he only brought 1,000 BGO heavy cavalry, but in fact, he secretly transferred all the BGO troops back. Shen Sangxiu's eyes were cold. As for why Qi Yi mobilized the BGO troops to besiege Yangning's House City, everyone present thought of one word: sacrifice. Qi Yi wanted to sacrifice the people of the entire Yangning's House City. It seems that the BGO troops have not attacked the city yet. Let's rush into Yangning's House City first, Leng Kang said quickly. Zheng Yuanxi and Shen Sangxiu wanted to fly back to Yangning's House City at this moment, so they nodded quickly. Leng Kang, you go back first. I'll go back to Xianyang Gate, Zhao Dingshan said in a deep voice. Don't look at him now as the deputy chief of the Zunshan division, but his real roots are still Xianyang Gate. This is his base. Yangning's House City is still protected by a solid wall, but there is no telling what might happen at Xianyang Gate, so he must go back and take charge. Okay. Deputy Chief Zhao, be careful. If there is any situation, contact me at any time. Leng Kang nodded. Yes. Zhao Dingshan clasped his fists, leaped up, and flew towards Xianyang Gate. Chapter 232. Trampled. After Zhao Dingshan left, Qin Yang and his companions looked at the BGO camp in the distance, their eyes flickering. Let's ignore the BGO army and rush directly into Yangning Prefecture City, Leng Kang said in a deep voice. He didn't know what was so strange about the BGO camp, so he didn't plan to take any risks. After the fierce battle at Fuheihao Mansion last night, the condition of several people was not very good. Then let's act separately. In this way, even if the other party wants to stop us, they probably can't do it, Shen Sangxiu suggested. Qin Yang and his companions agreed. Immediately, the 4 of them rushed towards Yangning Prefecture City separately. Qin Yang used the magical power of fleeting light and turned into a beam of black light, moving at an extremely fast speed. The flying swallow step seems to be a little insufficient, Qin Yang muttered to himself while rushing. After practicing the flying swallow step, he never practiced any other skills. But the flying swallow step itself is only a third-rate body movement. Qin Yang has been able to use it until now, all thanks to his own terrifying explosive power. But now, as Qin Yang's cultivation level continues to improve, his body movement should also be improved. However, these need to be discussed after returning to the patrol department. Originally, Qin Yang thought that he would encounter some obstacles, but there was no reaction from the BGO army camp. I don't know whether they didn't find them or it was intentional. Anyway, Qin Yang and his companions returned to Yangning Prefecture smoothly. Xianyang sect, located in a mountain range more than 30 miles away from Yangning Prefecture. As one of the 4 major sects, Xianyang sect has more than 1,000 people and many masters. In addition to the sect masters Oudingshan, there are several elders and deputy sect masters, who are also grand masters of the 3 flowers gathering at the top of the head. On this day, the sky was slightly bright. Many disciples of Xianyang sect were training their blood and ki in the martial arts square and practicing boxing. Deputy sect master Kaozi sat cross-legged in a tower, bathing in the golden light, practicing the Xianyang heart method, and emitting scorching radiation. Kill. Suddenly, a burst of shouting and killing came from the foot of the mountain. Kaozi, who was practicing, suddenly opened his eyes. Who dares to attack my Xianyang sect? The next moment, he jumped and landed in the center of the martial arts square. Hundreds of practitioners also stood behind Kaozi with a fierce momentum. Boom. The entire martial arts square was shaking. Kaozi's eyes suddenly changed. In the smoke and dust, countless cavalrymen wearing dragon armor and with a cold temperament actually rushed to the mountain gate. Northern Dragon Heavy Cavalry. Kaozi recognized these knights and his face changed drastically, especially the leader, holding a dragon halberd with an arrogant aura. It was the young Marquis Qin. After leaving Fuheihao Mansion, he immediately led the Northern Dragon Heavy Cavalry and rushed straight to Xianyang Gate. Young Marquis, you are not guarding the old Marquis at Fuheihao Mansion, but leading troops to attack our Xianyang sect mountain gate. What do you want to do? Kaozi felt humiliated, but he could only suppress it and asked silently. At the same time, many Xianyang sect disciples were also terrified and suspicious. When did their Xianyang sect offend the Fuhei Marquis mansion? It's nothing. I just want to borrow your head. Qiyuan grinned, and the moment he galloped on his horse, the Jiaolang halberd in his hand suddenly turned into a black light and slashed towards Kaozi. This halberd was very terrifying. It was like a dragon flying across the sky, killing demons, extremely ferocious. Kaozi didn't expect Qiyuan to be so overbearing and unreasonable, and actually attacked directly. Having lost the initiative, he could only draw a big knife, hold it with both hands, and slash forward horizontally, trying to swing the halberd away. With a clang, the power of the halberd was far beyond Kaozi's imagination. Puff! His legs and knees actually exploded. He was nailed on the ground by Qiyuan's halberd. The next moment, the Jiaolang halberd drew a strange black light and swept over Kaozi's head. Seeing that the deputy sect leader was solved by Qiyuan in 2 moves, everyone was stunned. Only Kaozi had a cold look in his eyes and waved his halberd with one hand. Bloodbath Xianyangman. The heavy cavalry behind him instantly charged and rushed into the disciples of Xianyangman. Boom. Countless disciples were knocked to the ground and then trampled into blood by the heavy cavalry. Even if some disciples could resist a little, they were soon pierced through the body by the spear and died. Soon, Xianyangman was completely reduced to a purgatory. A lot of blood flowed on the ground. After all the people in Xianyangman were killed, the corpses were gathered and piled into a mountain. Qiyuan turned over and got off the horse. At the same time, a coffin was also carried over. Use blood as a medium to reach the other side. The strange and old chanting sound came from the coffin. In a trance, many figures in tall hats and white robes appeared near the coffin, reciting scriptures for salvation and shaking various magic tools in their hands. Xianyangman, which had already turned into a mountain of corpses, looked even more ghostly. Uncle Lee, I'll leave this to you. Qiyuan said calmly. Don't worry, young Marquis. Nothing will happen as long as I'm here. Li Chen's figure emerged from the shadows. Qiyuan nodded, and he still had to run to the next place. Lishu Sword Sect. Today he will personally lead the BGO Heavy Cavalry to crush Xianyang Sect, Lishu Sword Sect and Bay Temple. This is part of the plan. The BGO army gathered in Yangning Prefecture City, attracting everyone's attention. Taking advantage of this gap, Qiyuan led the BGO Heavy Cavalry to flatten the 3 major sects. The disciples of these sects are all warriors, and they are the best blood food for sacrifice. Moreover, after dealing with them, Qi Yuan can also concentrate on dealing with Yangning Prefecture City without worrying about these sects making small moves behind the scenes. Boom soon. Qi Yuan led the BGO heavy cavalry away from Xianyang sect. Only Li Chen was left, and the red coffin. Half an hour later, the red coffin flashed an evil light, then dimmed and returned to normal. Li Chen then carried the red coffin and headed for the Lishu Sword sect. To sum it up, the young Marquis should have flattened the Lishu Sword sect. Li Chen muttered to himself, and his figure quickly disappeared in the Xianyang gate. After a long time, an anxious figure finally appeared in the Xianyang gate. Zhao Dingshan looked at the pile of corpses, whose flesh and blood had been sucked dry, and let out a heart-wrenching roar. Qi Yuan. Qi Yi. I will definitely cut you into pieces. Zhao Dingshan was so excited that he could not calm down. Master. A figure appeared quietly. The man who came was a long-faced man named Qi Lao, an elder of the Xianyang gate. When Qi Yuan was killing people, he knew that he was no match at all, and hid in a secret underground room. He did not dare to appear until he heard Zhao Dingshan's voice. It should be Qi Yuan who did it. Zhao Dingshan said coldly. That's right. It was Qi Yuan. He led the BGO heavy cavalry and rushed directly to the mountain gate. First killed Deputy Sect Master Cairo, and then started the massacre. Xi Lao's face was full of grief and anger. Zhao Dingshan nodded gently. He did not blame Xi Lao, because he saw Qi Yuan's strength with his own eyes. Even Shen Sangxiu and Zheng Yuanxi could hardly stop him when they joined forces. Chapter 233 Rest. After crushing Xianyang Gate, Qi Yuan should be heading towards Lishu Sword Sect. Zhao Dingshan looked in the direction of Lishu Sword Sect. Because the location of Bei Temple is very remote, and Lishu Sword Sect is closer to Xianyang Gate. Xi Lao, let's go check the situation of Lishu Sword Sect first. Zhao Dingshan said in a deep voice. Master, these corpses. Xi Lao hesitated. The most important thing is to avenge them. As for the corpses, what's the point of giving them a grand funeral? They will still not come back to life. Zhao Dingshan said coldly. Xi Lao said no more. The two immediately flew towards the direction of Lishu Sword Sect. Yangning's Sao City. When Qin Yang jumped onto the city gate, he was locked by many auras. However, after seeing his appearance, the owners of these auras obviously recognized him and withdrew their auras. Qin Yang, you are finally back. Zhao Xinmo appeared from a shadow. I almost couldn't come back. This time, Fu Heihao Mansion was a hangman banquet. Even Deputy Chief Ma got caught in it. Qin Yang shook his head. So scary? Zhao Xinmo was shocked. Yes. Come with me to the patrol department later. I have something to give you. Qin Yang said anxiously. Okay. Zhao Xinmo nodded. At this time, Len Kang also jumped onto the top of the city. At this moment, the top of the city had long been guarded by many disciples of aristocratic families and soldiers of the patrol department's prison department. Len Kang quickly asked someone about the situation in the city. After knowing that Song Yejun was still in the patrol department, he found Qin Yang and went back together. Of course, Zhao Xinmo was also traveling with him. The patrol hall seemed to be covered with dark clouds. Song Yejun sat in the main seat with his eyes closed. Chief Song, the BGO army left the border without any transfer order. Now they are besieging Yangning Prefecture City. I'm afraid they are not here for good. Yangning Prefecture Governor Qian Fangluo sat below with a frown. As a governor of a state, Qian Fangluo's presence is not strong. Because he has no real power, the power of the state government has long been hollowed out by the aristocratic families. He can only stand on the side of Song Yejun, who is also from the court. Originally, with the aristocratic families being cleared out of the patrol department, Qian Fangluo finally saw a glimmer of hope. But unexpectedly, the sudden death of Fu Heihao led to a series of things. Now the BGO army has surrounded Yangning's Sao City. As for the intention, no one would think that the BGO army is going home to visit relatives. I'm also wondering, maybe I will know when Len Kang and the others come back. Song Yejun is not a god and cannot predict everything. It is mainly the sudden death of Fu Heihao and the strange appearance of the BGO army, which surrounded Yangning City. This series of events happened in succession, which made people very confused. Everyone knows that there must be evil intentions hidden in it. But what is the reason? It is difficult to guess. Chief. Supervisor Leng is back, as Yuxi said in a deep voice outside the hall. Hurry up and let him come back. Even Song Yejun was a little anxious. Soon, Leng Kang and Qin Yang walked into the hall. Leng Kang, what exactly happened in the Fu Heihao mansion? Song Yejun got straight to the point. He was eager to know what was going on in the Fu Heihao mansion. The death of Fu Heihao this time was a huge conspiracy. Leng Kang had naturally thought of what to say on the way back, and he told the whole story fluently and naturally. Song Yejun and Qian Fangluo listened quietly. Is this Fu Heihao really crazy? He wants to sacrifice the entire Yangning prefecture. Qian Fangluo's eyes widened. He thought of many reasons. He even thought that Fu Heihao Qi was rebelling by faking his death. But he never thought that Fu Heihao wanted to sacrifice the entire Yangning prefecture and millions of people. What on earth did Qi want to do? Exclamation mark. Where is the other Shore Sutterer? Song Yejun captured the key information. I gave it to Zhao Zhenmo and asked him to translate it. He knows the language of Dacian Kingdom better. Qin Yang said. Well, tell him to translate it and notify me immediately. Leng Kang, Qin Yang, you go back and recuperate first. I'm afraid there will be a big battle soon. Song Yejun saw that Qin Yang and Leng Kang were both seriously injured and said directly. Qin Yang nodded immediately and turned to leave the hall. Leng Kang also knew that the battle was coming and it was most important to restore his strength. He also clasped his hands and said goodbye. Mr. Qian, please come forward and call the people from the 9 great families. After Shen Sangxiu and Zheng Yuanxi come back, the people from the families should also know what happened and will not refuse. Song Yejun said in a deep voice. What he has to do now is to immediately integrate all the forces in the city, big and small. In this way, there will be a chance to fight against the BGO army outside the city. I'll do it now. Qian Fangluo nodded. He also knew this truth. It is impossible to stop the 50,000 BGO army with the power of the Patrol Sky Division alone. Not to mention that there is also that old Marquis. Qian Fangluo is not afraid that the 9 great families will not contribute. If Yangning City is broken, no one can escape. For the 9 great families, it is even more difficult to accept. After Qin Yang returned to his room, he quickly took the healing pill. When the injury was slightly suppressed, he used his blood and ki to hook out the Yang talisman, and his blood and ki were vigorous, constantly enhancing his recovery ability and repairing his wounds. At the same time, he opened the system panel. Host, Qin Yang Bidao Zen Wuzu and Gong, level 1, 56/800, beaming black water true Gong, perfect, suppressing evil, Yin and Yang life and death talisman sutra, level 7, Yin talisman. 620/1200 Yang talisman. 665/1200, evil flood swallowing evil blade, perfect, extreme evil, dragon elephant fist, perfect, unparalleled in strength. Before, when fighting with the trapped old monk in Fu Heihao mansion, Qin Yang realized the ultimate mystery of the evil flood swallowing evil blade and directly sublimated its realm to perfection. At the same time, the magical power of the evil flood swallowing evil blade was also condensed. Extreme evil, condensing thousands of evil thoughts to shock the enemy's soul. This is a spiritual attack. Qin Yang felt that if he used it in a fierce battle, the enemy would be in great trouble. It was quite fun to fight at the Fu Hei Marquis's mansion this time. It's a pity that I didn't fight with that young Marquis. He looks stronger than the trapped old monk. Qin Yang murmured in a low voice. Of course, he knew he still had a chance. Soon, the Beijiao army would definitely attack the city. At that time, he would be able to compete with that young Marquis Qiyun. Before that, he had to recover from his injuries first. Beidao Zhenwu's vitality quickly spread in his body, repairing the damaged tendons, veins, blood, flesh and internal organs. At the same time, the major forces in Yangning's Hao City finally knew the intentions of the Beijiao army. For a time, people were in panic. Among the 9 major families, the Li family, Wu family, Tao family, etc., because their respective heads died in Fu Hei Marquis, for a time, there was no leader, and it was very chaotic. In the end, it was Shen Sangxiu who came forward to suppress these disturbances. Then he brought representatives from various major families to the Sky Patrol Division to discuss with Song Yejun how to deal with the Northern Dragon Army. Chapter 234 Decryption. The Heavenly Patrol Hall was more lively than ever before. In addition to several big figures from the Heavenly Patrol Division, the 9 great families and all the large, medium and small forces sent representatives here. Even families like the Li family and the Wu family, which had deep grievances with the Heavenly Patrol Division, also sent people here. Everyone knows the current situation of the Northern Dragon Army. In short, Qi Yuan must be coming here to sacrifice the Yangning Prefecture city. Once the city is broken, your 9 great families and major forces will never be spared. Song Yejun said in a deep voice without any scruples. Time is running out, and now we have to make things clear, and not give these families any chance to hesitate. I think maybe we can talk to Qi Yuan. The leader of medium-sized gang whispered. Then you can go and talk. Not only you, anyone can go and talk. Song Yejun said lightly. The gang leader immediately looked embarrassed and stopped talking. If he really went to find Qi Yuan, he might be a sheep walking into the tiger's mouth. It's useless. Qi Yuan won't let any of us go. Even if he really agrees to let you go, it's just a delaying tactic. I guess after Yangning's Hao City is breached, and our resistance forces are eliminated, they will come to settle accounts with you. Shen Sanxiu also poured cold water. Everyone's expression became heavy. So, we have to fight to the death. You want to protect your foundation. I, the Patrol Sky Division, also want to protect the people of Yangning's Hao City. Only if we work together, I have the confidence to defeat the BGO army. Song Yejun said in a deep voice. Shen Sanxiu, Zheng Yuanxi and others immediately agreed. Soon, not only the 9 great families, but also the large, medium and small forces did not have the heart to take chances and also agreed. After that, it was to coordinate the forces of all forces and then designate the defense tasks. These things were all done by the military prison department. The BGO army outside the city still did not make any movement and remained motionless. One day later, the forces of all forces were finally gathered together, and surprisingly, they also formed an army of 50,000. This includes soldiers from the military prison department and the constables of the state government. In terms of training and legion combat, these 50,000 troops are naturally far inferior to the well-trained and fierce BGO army. You must know that the BGO army is an elite army that fights the Nandmang aliens day and night on the border. But these 50,000 troops have many warriors with profound cultivation and extraordinary strength. What's more, this is a battle to defend the city, not a duel between armies in the wild, and they also occupy the advantage of the terrain. All the many aristocratic families and small and medium-sized forces have regained their confidence and feel that they will be able to repel the BGO army. As for the situation in the city, it is still relatively stable, and there is no major unrest. Some small unrest will be suppressed quickly. On this day, Song Yejun, Shen Sanxiu, Leng Kang and others were observing the situation of the BGO army on the city wall. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh 7 or 8 figures suddenly attacked, gently borrowing the power from the city wall, and easily flipped and flashed. Deputy Chief Zhao, Sect Master Shangguan and Master Fiayu Temple. Leng Kang was surprised when he saw the 3 figures in the lead. 3. What is this? Song Yejun also frowned. Chief Song, Qi Yuan is so crazy that he led the BGO heavy cavalry to flatten our 3 major sects. I, Sect Master Shangguan and Master Fiayu Temple joined forces in Bei Temple to deal with Qi Yuan. In the end, we were defeated and could only flee in panic. Zhao Dingshan's eyes were vicious. What? The 3 major sects were all trampled? No wonder the BGO army has been keeping its troops in place. It turns out that Qi Yuan is not here. Zheng Yuanxi was shocked after hearing this. Is Qi Yuan really so fierce? Song Yejun also frowned. It seems a bit exaggerated that the 3 sect masters could not defeat him together. Well, Qi Yuan's own cultivation is only the 5 keys to the origin realm. But his strength is amazing. It may be blessed by some evil method. Zhao Dingshan said. Well, when Qi Yuan attacks the city, I will naturally deal with it. Song Yejun said calmly. As a Zuanwu master, it is not a problem for him to control Qi Yuan, who is in the 5-kiss Chao Yuan realm. Of course, he has another worry that he did not say. In fact, everyone present also understood. That is Qi. The old Marquis has not appeared yet. But in this situation, everyone can only take one step and see. Because no one has a way out. Song Yechen ordered Leng Kang to take Zhao Dingshan and others back to recuperate and rest. No one can reveal this matter. After Zhao Dingshan and others left, Song Yechen said lightly, Shen Sangxiu and Zheng Yuan. She nodded gently. Once the destruction of the three major sects is revealed, it will only hit morale and cause an uproar. Qi Yuan. Qi Song Yechen stood on the top of the city, looking at the BGO camp in the distance, talking to himself. He came from Daewoo Imperial City on orders, and his ultimate goal was to deal with Fu Heihao Mansion. After years of painstaking planning, he was about to start with Fu Heihao Mansion. Unexpectedly, he was still a step slower. Song Yechen didn't know whether his intention was seen through by Fu Heihao Qi, or it was really a coincidence. The situation gradually developed in an unpredictable direction. Qi, what do you want to do? Song Yechen said to himself. In the Zunshan division, Qin Yang was practicing to heal his wounds. With the special effects of the Yang Fu and various healing pills, his flesh, blood, and bones have recovered by more than half. As long as one day passes, he should be able to recover. Qin Yang, I know what Qi wants to do. An urgent voice came from outside the house. Qin Yang opened his eyes, dodged and opened the door. Outside the door, Zhao Zinmo was holding the human skin scroll, very excited. Come in and talk, Qin Yang said. The two sat down on both sides of the table. I stayed up all night last night and roughly translated this Bayan Sutra. Zhao Zinmo's eyes were bloodshot. What do you mean? Qin Yang asked. This so-called other Shore Sutra is actually a strange evil magic. I have told you before about the origin of the ghost seed. It is the twisted power that descended from the void. And this other Shore Sutra allows people to communicate with the void. Let the void send down strange power and communicate with people's bodies to bear this strange power. In other words, Qi wants to become a ghost seed. Zhao Zinmo said in a deep voice. Can people become ghost seeds? Qin Yang was surprised. Well, Qi's original plan should not be like this. Remember the ghost seed faceless Buddha statue in the questioning heart temple. I think Qi's original plan should be to summon that ghost seed Buddha statue and then take over his body and turn into a ghost seed. But now that ghost seed has been destroyed by Taoist Zhu and Qian. Qi has no choice. He chose a more crazy plan, holding a blood sacrifice ceremony, summoning the void, and turning his body into a ghost seed. Zhao Zinmo said in surprise. Is there any difference? Qin Yang frowned. The former should have a higher success rate and is safer. Now this method has no way out. Zhao Zinmo said. Chapter 235 Steal. Has Qi gone crazy to steal the power of the ghost seed? Qin Yang's eyes flickered. He's not crazy. He's much more sober than you. He's over 100 years old. It's probably hopeless to break through to the martial saint level. His lifespan is running out. Only by putting hope on the ghost seed can he survive. Zhao Zinmo said softly. That's right. This reason to survive is enough. Qin Yang nodded. It's hard for ordinary people to accept death, let alone a big man like Qi. Enjoying the glory of the world, having a lofty status, and being admired by thousands of people in Yangning Prefecture. But as long as he dies, all of these will be gone. The ceremony recorded in this other Shore scripture is divided into two stages. They are spirit blood and offering sacrifice to the sky. Spirit blood is the vital blood, which Qi absorbs. In this stage, the physical body gradually changes to prepare for the transformation into a ghost seed. That's why Qi faked his death and led all of you to the Fu Heihao mansion. Because the warrior's essence and blood are undoubtedly the most vigorous. Zhao Zinmo continued. No wonder Qi is so scary. Everything is his plan. Qin Yang nodded. Then it's time to offer sacrifice to the heaven. The heaven here is not God, but the void heaven. Due to the existence of the forbidden technique of isolating heaven and earth, it takes a huge amount of resentment and death energy of living beings to make the void feel the sacrificial ceremony. So Qi chose Yangning's Hao City. As long as the Yangning's Hao City is slaughtered and the ceremony is completed, Qi will get the power of the void to descend, turn into a ghost seed, and achieve immortality. Zhao Zinmo analyzed. Qin Yang understood everything. Monk Kungsan must have grasped Qi's weakness and asked him to cooperate. For the other Shore sect, as long as the power of the ghost seed descends, it will be fine. They don't care what the original body of this ghost seed is. That's why they tried their best to assist Qi. Do you think there is a way to interrupt this ceremony? Qin Yang asked. The simplest and most direct way. Kill Qi. Zhao Zinmo smiled. That I can't do. You go find Song Yejun and Zuan Qian. It depends on whether they can do it. Qin Yang shook his head. Don't worry, I'll find them later. Zhao Zinmo nodded. He knew that Qin Yang needed time to recover, so he stopped disturbing him and said goodbye. Qin Yang returned to the bed and continued to meditate and circulate his blood. How strong is the power of the ghost species? Even Qi did something so infuriating. Qin Yang pondered. Another day passed. Because Zhao Zinmo completely translated the other Shore Sutra, Song Yejun and others finally understood all of Qi's plots. However, this could only solve the confusion and had no effect on the situation in Yangning Prefecture, and the BGO army finally took action. In the early morning, a large number of troops began to mobilize. Qi Yuan blatantly assembled the army without any concealment. It was as if he was telling Song Yejun and others that he was going to attack, so you should be prepared. Arrogant. For a while, everyone in Yangning's Hao City was as if they were facing a great enemy. Song Yejun, Shen Sangxiu, and Leng Kang did not dare to leave at all and had been stationed at the city gate. And Qin Yang finally walked out of the patrol department. The dark clouds of war were shrouded, and the streets were quiet and deserted, with few pedestrians. For the common people, it was simply impossible to go out, and they could only close the doors and windows in the house, hoping that the patrol department could guard the city gate. Although ordinary people did not know why the BGO army came to attack the city. However, bloody incidents after the city was broken occurred repeatedly in all dynasties. No one wanted Yangning's Hao City to be broken. Along the way, Qin Yang could hear some prayers coming from many houses, and the streets were filled with the smell of a lot of incense and candles. For the common people, immortals and Buddhas are the only things they can pray for. Zhao Zinmo followed Qin Yang and shook his head slightly. Immortals and Buddhas had long passed away. The ancestors of the Dacian kingdom tried their best to erase the traces of immortals and Buddhas, but they just hoped that people in later generations could rely on their own strength. Qin Yang said lightly. How many people can understand this truth? Zhao Zinmo said softly. That's right, they are just ordinary people. Don't be too demanding. Qin Yang nodded gently. The two stopped talking and headed towards the east gate. There are large armies of BGO gathered at the four gates of Yangning's Hao City. However, the largest number of people is still at the east gate. According to the clues, Qi Yuan has appeared in the BGO army outside the east gate. When Qin Yang and Zhao Zinmo climbed up the city tower, they saw Song Yejun, Zhao Dingshan, Shen Sangxiu and others. Even Leng Kang was there. Shangguan Yan, Fei Guantu, Zheng Yuanxi and others went to guard the other gates. From the current situation, the three gates of the south, west, and north should all be feints, just to disperse our forces. Qi Yuan should choose to attack the east gate, Leng Kang said in a deep voice. Qin Yang looked at the densely packed and murderous BGO army in the distance and frowned slightly. Didn't they make any siege equipment? No need. The gate of Yangning City is high. But as long as you reach the inner breath realm, you can jump up, as long as you have practiced some Qingang. Even if you haven't reached the inner breath realm, using some tools like flying claws is much more convenient than ladders. Leng Kang explained. Qin Yang suddenly realized he was using his past life experience to imagine the siege war. But although this world still fights with cold weapons, there are super powerful beings like warriors, and the reliance on siege equipment is not so strong. Kill, kill, kill. Countless shouts came from afar. The BGO army finally launched an attack. And the attack formation was very strange. It was actually lined up in a long snake formation. Looking out from the tower, it seemed as if a vicious black dragon was rampant on the earth, sweeping over. The strong murderous aura seemed to make the world pale in comparison. Now the people on the tower have never experienced a real battlefield, and seeing this scene, their minds seemed to be shocked. Qi Yuan, this guy. Song Yejun's eyes flickered, and he ordered to shoot. For a moment, dense and sharp arrows broke through the air. But the formation of the long snake formation was very narrow and long, and it was not spread over a large area. In addition, the BGO army was well equipped, wearing dragon armor, and holding one-handed shields. When the rain of arrows fell, it caused almost no damage. "I'll do it." Zuan saw this scene on the tower and shouted coldly. He used his own magic power and cast a spell. Swish, swish, swish. I saw dozens of dice being thrown out by him. These dice quickly grew larger in the air and fell towards the BGO army like boulders. "Don't be so arrogant." A domineering and arrogant voice resounded in all directions. I saw a tyrant figure holding a dragon halberd rising into the sky. Swish, swish, swish. The thick black halberd light slashed out, breaking the dice in midair, even if a few were missed. Li Chen also took action and smashed the dice. "Damn it. Throw the talisman for me." Seeing that his dice didn't work, Zuan was furious and said directly. In an instant, more than a dozen spiritual masters of the Zuanling department took action at the same time, throwing out spiritual talismans one after another. Chapter 236 Fight. Most of these talismans turned into fireballs and fell towards the BGO army. "Carry the coffin," Qi Yuan shouted, after landing on the horse's back from midair. In an instant, the soldiers at the front of the formation suddenly separated to both sides. A dozen BGO soldiers appeared carrying a mahogany coffin. This mahogany coffin exuded a gloomy and chaotic fluctuation. When the fireball talismans fell, they seemed to be affected and extinguished strangely. The coffin distorted and dissipated the power of the talisman. Zuan felt the strange aura emanating from the mahogany coffin and frowned slightly. However, something even stranger happened. The fluctuations emitted by the mahogany coffin became stronger and stronger, and even turned into a scolloped strange airflow visible to the naked eye. It seemed to form a barrier, covering the sky above the BGO army. "They are planning to drive straight in and attack the city gate directly." Song Yechen saw Qi Yuan's plan. Because when the strange barrier of the mahogany coffin is formed, not to mention the talisman, even the arrows will be affected by some kind of force, and then they will fall powerlessly, without any killing power. The current scene. It was as if the mahogany coffin turned into a dragon head and rushed towards the city gate frantically. "Qi Yuan is forcing us to take action," Shen Sangxiu said coldly, and Qi Yuan seemed to be unable to wait, suddenly waving the reins, riding out of the formation. One man, one halberd and one horse actually rushed over like this. "I heard that Qi Yuan's mount is a strange beast with dragon blood, infinite power, and terrifying charging power," Len Kang said again. "Is it so strong?" Qin Yang looked at Qi Yuan's expression and became more and more excited. Boom. Qi Yuan rode and attacked. He himself seemed to be a dragon, with a violent and boundless momentum, even making people feel suffocated. The dragon horse under his feet had too much explosive power, and in the blink of an eye it rushed to the front of the city gate, and the halberd stabbed heavily. It was like a giant dragon crashing into the city. The heavy black iron gate was pierced by Qi Yuan's halberd. Because the force was too violent, the entire gate was deformed. The people on the tower felt like an earthquake. Qin Yang, Len Kang, Deputy Chief Zhao and Master Shen. "You go deal with Qi Yuan." Song Yechen would naturally not let Qi Yuan really break through the city gate, and gave the order decisively. Qin Yang, who had been unable to hold back for a long time, grinned, suddenly pulled out the Hanua knife, and jumped down in the air. The knife light was like a falling crescent moon, flashing a sharp and extremely cold platinum light, and fiercely chopped towards Qi Yuan's head. This knife was extremely swift, and carried an amazing murderous aura. Qi Yuan felt this murderous aura, smiled disdainfully, and the halberd in his hand suddenly lifted up like a rising sun. With a clang, Qin Yang finally realized what the huge force Zhao Dingshan said felt like. Even though the dragon elephant fist was perfect and his ki and blood were strong, he still felt the pain of a crack in his tiger's mouth. His body was lifted up by a halberd and flew into the air again. Qi Yuan also jumped up from the Jialan horse, and the halberd in his hand suddenly slashed out dense black light blades. 3 flowers gather at the top. Strong and fierce. Qin Yang roared wildly, his body swelled fiercely, his flesh and blood seemed to be entangled and swollen like dragons and snakes, his muscles swelled and ferocious, his strength suddenly increased. Waving the cold abyss blade and directly slashed out the black sea devouring wave slash. As the evil flood devouring evil blade reached perfection, a white and gold evil dragon instantly appeared behind him and roared to the sky. Clang clang clang. The two fought wildly in the air, and the cold abyss blade and the Jialang halberd kept colliding. From a distance, it seemed as if two dragons were fighting in the sky. However, the two did not have the skill of flying in the air after all, and after fighting for dozens of moves, they fell to the ground again. Qin Yang was about to speak. Qi Yuan, accept your fate. Zhao Dingshan roared, his hands wrapped with golden yang energy, and he hit Qi Yuan fiercely. Qi Yuan was the one who broke through the Xianyang gate, and Zhao Dingshan and him were blood enemies. Leng Kang also exploded his own 5 internal organs essence, and hit a big palm of illusory energy fiercely. Shen Sanxiu held the white jade flute in his hand, and swung it quickly. For a moment, dense sword energy intertwined, as if forming bamboo leaves flying all over the sky, shooting towards Qi Yuan. Ha ha ha. Can you beat me with more people? Qi Yuan was full of heroic spirit, and laughed at the sky. He and the dragon horse under his crotch seemed to be one in mind, and their bodies expanded in an instant. Especially Qi Yuan. The muscles all over his body seemed to burst the dragon armor, extremely fierce, wrapped in fierce airflow, and swung the dragon halberd heavily. Bang bang bang. Zhao Dingshan and Leng Kang were suddenly blasted out by his halberd. As for Shen Sanxiu, he rode his horse and galloped, as if he had turned into a flash of lightning. Along the way, no matter what sword energy fell on him, it was directly crushed by the impact force. Shen Sanxiu's expression changed, and he dodged backwards fiercely. But Qi Yuan didn't want to let him go at all. The Jialang halberd in his hand flashed black light, and stabbed Shen Sanxiu fiercely. The speed was too fast, and he passed more than 10 meters in the blink of an eye. Shen Sanxiu's eyes were stunned, and his whole body was full of energy and spirit, and the energy of his 5 internal organs was united. A terrible sword intent rose in Shen Sanxiu's body. White jade cut. Shen Sanxiu held the white jade flute in both hands, and his mind was united. With a whoosh, a beam of white sword energy several meters long suddenly formed. This sword energy felt like substance, just like white jade smooth and elegant. But when it was cut out, it seemed as if even the void was chopped into pieces. Qi Yuan's eyes condensed, and he didn't swing the halberd to block it, but stabbed Shen Sanxiu's heart fiercely. Puff! A black light was like a dragon. In the incredible eyes of Shen Sanxiu, it pierced through his protective energy and stabbed into his heart. Qi Yuan also did not avoid his white jade sword. With a puff, the moment it landed on his chest, the dragon armor shattered. But the white jade sword energy also disintegrated directly. My armor is made of cold crystal iron, and it has accompanied me through dozens of battles. Now I exchange my life with you, and it can be considered a worthy death. Qi Yuan grinned, as if he had expected this scene. Shen Sanxiu seemed to want to say something, but the next moment, his body was ravaged by a violent energy and suddenly exploded into countless blood. The dignified head of the Shen family was killed by Qi Yuan with a halberd. Even the head of the Shen family can't beat this Qi Yuan. It's really a demonic power. It's really amazing to be called a young marquis. On the city wall, many people saw Shen Sanxiu being chopped by Qi Yuan's halberd, and their eyes were horrified. But in the next second, a figure like a giant beast rushed towards Qi Yuan savagely. Kill. Qin Yang's eyes were fierce, and the Hanua knife emitted bursts of cold light, slashing towards Qi Yuan. It's you again. Since you are so anxious to die, get rid of you first. Qi Yuan saw Qin Yang, his face sank. It was because of misjudging this person's strength that he failed to kill Shen Sanxiu and others in Fu Heihao Mansion. This led to more efforts now. I will get rid of you first, then kill that old dog Qi Yi. Qin Yang roared. You are looking for death. Qi Yuan was furious, and the halberd in his hand pressed towards Qin Yang like a streak of silk. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 237, The Marquis of Fuhei. Boom boom. When the two weapons hit each other, the ground under Qin Yang's feet suddenly collapsed, stirring up gravel and dust. That's all the power. Qi Yuan roared, swinging his halberd and smashing it down again. Qin Yang roared, and the cold abyss knife was wrapped in endless murderous energy. Clang clang clang. The two sides fought fiercely and fiercely. The airwaves cut deep marks on the ground. Zhao Dingshan and Len Kang also came to support at this time and joined forces with Qin Yang to deal with Qi Yuan. Several people fought fiercely. From the city gate all the way to 4 or 5 miles away, leaving a ruined land. Song Yechen now has no time to care about the battle situation on Qi Yuan's side, because the soldiers of the Northern Dragon Army have already carried the red coffin and rushed towards the city gate fiercely. Qi Yi, if you want to turn into a ghost species, you have to pass this level first. Song Yechen's eyes were condensed. A blue-black airflow appeared around him, and his facial features became particularly sharp. The shadow of a dark green tiger suddenly appeared behind him. Song Yechen was also a well-known executioner in Daudi City. He had torn countless people alive with his sky-splitting claw, and had developed a terrifying aura. However, this aura had been hidden since he came to the Sky Patrol division of Yangning's City. Until this moment, Song Yechen revealed the terrifying murderous intent in his heart. This guy's going to kill again. Zuan Khan shook his head slightly. He had seen Song Yechen go crazy. The next moment, Song Yechen jumped down from the tower, and his right hand condensed the terrifying aura, turning it into a ferocious dark green tiger claw. Whoosh! The airflow was instantly torn apart by the tiger claw, and it grabbed the red coffin fiercely. The tiger claw had not even fallen yet. The dozen soldiers carrying the coffin were shocked by the momentum. Their legs softened, and they knelt on the ground. The red coffin fell directly to the ground with a rumble. At the moment when the tiger claw fell, bang! A rotten and withered arm suddenly punched through the coffin board, and the 5 fingers clenched tightly, stabbing at the tiger claw like a hand knife. Boom. As the two sides collided, the red coffin exploded fiercely, and exploded into countless sawdust. Song Yechen, long time no see. A tall and withered figure slowly walked out of the dust. His skin was withered and dark blue, his sparse hair was tied up, and he was wearing a loose black robe. His facial features were old and rotten, covered with black spots, and exuded a strong aura of death. Qi Yi, you made yourself like this. Is it really worth it? Song Yechen looked at the figure and said coldly, why not? Over the years, I have been looking for a way to live forever. But I found that, as long as it is a human body, no matter how many elixirs you take, it will be useless. The blood and ki of the flesh will eventually collapse, and longevity seems to be an impossible wish. That kind of despair, you should not be able to experience it now. Qi Yi looked at Song Yechen and said lightly. He knew that this person was the biggest obstacle on his road to immortality. As long as he was defeated, there would be no more trouble in conquering Yangning's City. So, you chose to cooperate with the other Shu religion, and wanted to turn yourself into a ghost seed. Song Yechen narrowed his eyes. Qi Yi chuckled and said, it seems that you know everything. Yes, I want to turn into a ghost seed. Only the power of the ghost seed can allow me to gain immortality. Song Yechen shook his head. From the mythological era to the present, no ghost seed has survived. Do you think you will really be immortal after you turn into a ghost seed? Qi Yi said in a deep voice, at least, it will allow me to survive first. He didn't say any more nonsense, because he didn't have much time. His body was really decayed to the extreme. It was only because he had been absorbing essence and blood and performing sacrifices in the spirit blood stage these days that his body changed strangely. But the spirit blood stage has not yet turned into a ghost seed. Once too much blood is consumed, the body will still decay and die. The next moment, Qi Yi's withered body emitted bursts of corpse gas, and small and dense tumors bulged on the surface of his skin. Then these tumors continued to explode, growing out flower tentacles, scarlet and weird. The next moment, Qi Yi's right hand suddenly stretched out, like a tentacle, and smashed towards Song Yechen. Unexpectedly, as fast as lightning. Song Yechen's hands were like tiger claws, grabbing randomly, forming dense claw shadows. Bang bang bang. The tentacle was instantly torn and shattered by Song Yechen's tiger claws. Not fast enough, but Qi Yi shook his head slightly. The next moment, a dozen huge tumors bulged on his back. When these tumors exploded, they turned into scarlet tentacles, stabbing at Song Yechen frantically. These scarlet tentacles formed countless afterimages, squeezing the airflow, and were ferocious and terrifying. Song Yechon roared like a tiger, and the green tiger sky-splitting claw was used to its full potential, as if he had turned into a green tiger, leaving terrible claw marks and constantly colliding with the scarlet tentacles. The ghost seed of the other shore. It seems that Qi has really completed the sacrificial ceremony of the spiritual blood stage. Zhao Zinmo saw this scene and said coldly, "The ghost seed of the other shore. Do you know what it is?" Zhuan Kan asked unexpectedly. "I went to the Zunming department to find some information about the other shore religion yesterday. The other shore that the other shore religion believes in is a scarlet strange flower. It is also called the other shore flower. Once the other shore flower blooms in the world, it means endless death." Zhao Zinmo said in a deep voice. "No wonder. I see that Qi now has many characteristics of flowers." Zhuan Kan was thoughtful. "Don't worry about that side for now. The Northern Dragon Army is about to attack," Zhao Zinmo said anxiously. Qi and Song Yechon entangled and fought, but the offensive of the Northern Dragon Army has not stopped. Even though they didn't break through the city gate, they were very close to Yangning's house city. Flying claws suddenly hung on the top of the city. The soldiers of the Northern Dragon Army quickly climbed up the city wall with the help of flying claws. Some masters even jumped into the air and rushed up at the point of the city wall. "There is no way. Kill!" Zhuan Kan shouted. "Kill!" For a while, the city wall was full of shouts and killing. Those Northern Dragon soldiers who had just jumped onto the corridor of the city wall were chopped into minced meat in midair before they landed. The noble families, gangs, and even the people of the Patrol of the Sky also roared and fought with the soldiers of the Northern Dragon Army. For a while, many corpses fell from the top of the city, but dense figures rushed up one after another, bloody and tragic. It completely turned into a purgatory battlefield. Even Zhao Zinmo stood on the top of the city, holding an 8 diagrams realm in both hands and constantly urging it. Swish, swish, swish. The Bagua mirror continuously emitted golden light. The soldiers of the BGO army who were rushing up the city wall were hit by the golden light. They screamed, blood flowed from their eyes, and fell to the ground. That's right. Zhao Zinmo's Bagua mirror specializes in eyes. Zhuan Kan kept throwing dice. These dice quickly grew larger in the air, smashing the soldiers of the BGO army into mincemeat. But one person soon set his sights on him. Chapter 238, Heaven and Earth Collapse. As a spiritualist in the spirit realm, Zhuan Kan could be described as a killer in such an occasion. But soon, he felt a dense whistling sound coming from the air. Hundreds of copper coins whistled rapidly and were extremely sharp. Zhuan Kan sneered and formed seals with his hands. A deck of Pei Gao flew out of his sleeves. The Pei Gao formed a shield in the air and blocked Zhuan Kan. Ding ding ding. The rapidly rotating copper coins hit the Pei Gao shield crazily, embedding deeply into it, but not penetrating it. Li Chen's figure quietly appeared behind Zhuan Kan, holding a short dagger and stabbing Zhuan Kan's heart fiercely. At the moment of life and death, Zhuan Kan's figure suddenly disappeared. "Want to sneak attack the old Taoist? You are not qualified." Zhuan Kan sneered and waved his hands. Several dice were thrown out by him immediately. Li Chen also opened his hands and dozens of copper coins flew out. Zhuan Kan was running his magic power to drive the dice, while Li Chen used the hidden weapon technique to throw the copper coins. Ding ding ding. When the dice and the copper coins collided, Li Chen's figure flashed and rushed towards Zhuan Kan. This guy Zhuan Kan frowned slightly. As a spiritual master, he naturally couldn't let the warrior get close to him. He could only retreat again. This time, he was also dragged by Li Chen. For a while, the battlefield was divided into 3 parts. Qin Yang, Zhao Dingshan and Leng Kang joined forces to deal with Qi Yun. Song Yechon and Qi Yi were fighting. The city gate turned into a purgatory battlefield. Every battlefield was extremely fierce and terrifying. With a bang, a figure slammed into the city wall. The whole city wall shook. It was Zhao Dingshan. He was blown away by Qi Yun's halberd. He stood up with his head shaking, spitting blood. Qi Yun's halberd just hit his lower abdomen, as if his internal organs were about to collapse. If it weren't for the 5 kiss to Origin Realm to strengthen his internal organs, he couldn't stand it at all. Next, another figure flew backwards fiercely. Boom. The wall shook again. This time it was Leng Kang. He was in a worse situation than Zhao Dingshan. A bloody hole was pierced in his left shoulder, and his bones were pierced. Boom. For a moment, only Qin Yang was still fighting with Qi Yuan. Damn it. Come again. Len Kang's mouth was full of blood, and he laughed grimly, and rushed towards Qi Yuan again. Zhao Dingshan saw this, grinned, and rushed over as well. It's useless. How can you three be my opponents? Qi Yuan waved the halberd, like a peerless war god, unmatched. Qin Yang was unmoved, and used the evil dragon swallowing knife to the extreme. The knife flight was fierce and violent, and kept colliding with the dragon halberd. He was the only one who could block Qi Yuan head on. Zhao Dingshan and Len Kang could only attack from both sides. Forget it. I've had enough of you. Qi Yuan's eyes became extremely cold. Black godhide. Open. It seemed to be opening some secret method. A shadow like a dark god appeared faintly behind Qi Yuan. His body muscles grew wildly, and a strong dark airflow emanated from his body. The Jiaolang halberd thrust forward fiercely. Qin Yang felt the horror of this blow, and without hesitation, he fiercely slashed out the extreme evil heartless slash. With a bang, Qin Yang was actually knocked out by the halberd. But at the same time, Zhao Dingshan appeared on Qi Yuan's left side, and the Xianyang palm slammed into his Shineling acupoint with a bang. The golden flame energy exploded and spread. Qi Yuan was slapped by the palm, and blood flowed from his eyes, nose, and ears. But Zhao Dingshan's eyes suddenly widened. His chest was pierced by a big hand wrapped in dark airflow. If you can't kill me, you will die. Qi Yuan grinned. Bang. The next moment, Zhao Dingshan's body was blasted into pieces by the violent airflow. Len Kang's energy hand took this opportunity to slap Qi Yuan's back of the head fiercely. Qi Yuan was hit hard again, and his whole body was shocked. He laughed wildly, and the dragon halberd swept out fiercely. Len Kang slapped out with both hands in a row, but the dragon halberd cut off a part of his palm. Ah! Len Kang screamed, and the next moment he was hit hard by the dragon horse under Qi Yuan's crotch. Boom. All the bones in his body seemed to explode, and he flew out fiercely. In a vicious dragon roared. All the evil thoughts in Qin Yang's heart were gathered in his heart, and he slashed out with his sword. Evil dragon slash all evil with one thought. The cold abyss sword instantly turned into a platinum dragon with a broken sword in its mouth, rushing out ferociously. Qi Yuan backhanded, and stabbed with a halberd. It didn't hit the blade light, and missed. Puff. The next moment, the sharp and extremely cold platinum blade light fell on the head of the dragon horse. The huge and ferocious horse head was cut off. Boom, the dragon horse fell down with weak limbs. Qi Yuan reacted very quickly, leaping up, and did not fall down with the body of the dragon horse. He held a halberd in his hand. His physique was fierce, and his aura became more and more terrifying. You deserve to die. Qi Yuan was angry. His voice was like a ghost, resentful and angry. This dragon horse had fought with him for many years, and was very close to Qi Yuan. Now that Qin Yang had beheaded it with a knife, how could he not be angry? Then come and kill me. Now it's just the two of us. Qin Yang held the knife with both hands. His knees sank slightly, and he grinned. He deliberately killed the dragon horse. Because he found that Qi Yuan sat on the horse, the man and the horse became one, and his strength increased greatly. He guessed that this should be a special martial art, or a riding skill, which can integrate the power of the horse with his own power. This is why Zhao Dingshan and others think that Qi Yuan's strength is unusually amazing. All this is because of that dragon horse. Now that he has killed the dragon horse, Qi Yuan should not be so fierce. I will kill you. Qi Yuan dragged the halberd in one hand, and rushed towards Qin Yang. Whoosh. He accelerated and appeared in front of Qin Yang, swinging the halberd in one hand, and smashing it down with great force. Qin Yang grinned and chopped down with the Hanyuan knife. He wanted to try it head on to see if Qi Yuan's strength was weakened. With a bang, Qin Yang couldn't help but step back a few steps. But Qi Yuan also retreated. He retreated half a step. It seemed that Qin Yang was still at a disadvantage. But he laughed. Sure enough, you are not so scary without that horse. Qin Yang smiled. Killing you is enough. Qi Yuan jumped up suddenly and suddenly fell diagonally in midair. The halberd in his hand stabbed Qin Yang fiercely. Qin Yang dodged with a flash. But the next moment, Qi Yuan's halberd pierced the ground fiercely. The sky collapsed, and the earth cracked. Boom boom. The ground suddenly shook violently with the halberd as the center. Qin Yang was disturbed and quickly adjusted his balance. But the next moment, Qi Yuan appeared behind Qin Yang and swept his waist with a halberd. Bang! Qin Yang was swept away by the halberd and flew in the air. Qi Yuan's eyes were bloodshot and the halberd suddenly drew a matching arc and chopped down. Bang! Qin Yang's Hunyuan Qi was directly broken and was chopped directly on his body by the halberd. Boom! He smashed into the ground fiercely. Qi Yuan jumped up again and performed a sky-shattering and earth-shattering move. Chapter 239, Final Kill. Qi Yuan thought that this attack should be able to completely solve Qin Yang. But Qin Yang, who was hit hard on the ground, suddenly raised his head and looked at Qi Yuan. Yanfu, open. With a roar from Qin Yang, the whites of his eyes instantly disappeared and were covered by deep black. A violent and deep power also quickly emerged in Qin Yang's body. The closer the Yanfu is to death, the greater the power. Qin Yang put down the Hanua knife and clamped the halberd that was falling from the sky with both hands, looking for death. Qi Yuan's face was ferocious and he suddenly increased his strength. Puff! The halberd burst out with a huge force again, broke free from Qin Yang's hands and stabbed at his heart. Qin Yang took advantage of the moment when he clamped the halberd and jumped back suddenly. Boom! The halberd hit the ground hard, causing a violent vibration, and the ground rolled and undulated like waves. But Qin Yang avoided this vibration because he was in midair. Thunder palm. Boom. With a violent thunder, Qin Yang flashed in the air and hit hard with a palm. The explosive force was too strong, so Qi Yuan didn't have time to react and was hit hard in the chest. Qi Yuan also practiced a hard kick-in. The dark airflow wrapped around him protected his whole body like armor. When Qin Yang's thunder palm fell, the dark airflow was suddenly dispersed. Qi Yuan was not affected much, but for Qin Yang, it was enough. He just wanted to get close to Qi Yuan. Long weapons like halberds, once in close combat, not to mention how powerful they are, they can even be said to be a burden. Qin Yang grinned and directly used Dragon Elephant unparalleled dance. Bang bang bang, his heavy punches hit Qi Yuan violently and chaotically. Qi Yuan was holding a halberd, so it was difficult for him to even defend himself and was bombarded by Qin Yang. The heavy punches made Qi Yuan bleed from all 5 orifices, which was even more terrifying. Even though he had practiced hard kicking, his muscles, bones, blood, and flesh could not withstand this violent punch. Many times Qi Yuan wanted to leave the distance, but Qin Yang did not let him. Once he detected the other party's thoughts, he approached with the powerful explosive power of the thunder palm. Bang! Qin Yang's right hand hit Qi Yuan's head fiercely like a heavy whip. At the same time, he took a big step forward, raised his knees rapidly, and hit Qi Yuan's lower abdomen. His left elbow hit the back of Qi Yuan's head again. A series of terrifying heavy blows hit Qi Yuan. The young Marquis finally couldn't bear it. He had to throw out the halberd and hit Qin Yang's heart with his left hand. Bang! Qin Yang took his punch alive. Come. Qin Yang even showed a cruel and excited smile and hit the opponent's chin with a million mountain destroying punch. Qi Yuan screamed. His teeth were broken and his chin was bloody. He seemed to be furious, punching Qin Yang with both fists. Boom boom boom. The two of them started a fist-to-flesh fight outside the suburbs. Qin Yang let Qi Yuan's fists fall on him without any defense. Because his heavy fists were also hitting the other person violently, the terrifying fist wind whistled violently. The two of them were like crazy, losing all reason. The bodies of both sides were constantly squeezed by the violent fist force. The skin was broken and bleeding, and the internal organs were shaken. After dozens of punches, Qin Yang, with blood all over his face and a swollen nose and face, punched Qi Yuan in the heart. Qi Yuan seemed to have a sudden cardiac arrest and paused for a moment. Let's end it. Qin Yang's eyes were deep and his face was crazy. A black tortoise with a dragon head, a turtle body and a snake tail suddenly appeared behind him. All the Beidou black tortoise's vitality was poured into his left arm, emitting a platinum light. A dragon elephant smashed the mountain fiercely and domineeringly hit Qi Yuan's Shinling acupoint. Boom. There was a terrible bang. Qi Yuan flew backwards and rolled on the ground. Qin Yang coughed up blood, pulled out the Hanua knife, and slowly walked towards Qi Yuan. Qi Yuan, you lost this battle. Qin Yang grinned. I have been on the battlefield since I was a child, and I have never met an opponent. Today I was defeated by you, and I died a worthy death. When death was approaching, Qin Yang calmed down instead. Why? Why did you come back? Qin Yang asked. When he fought with Qin Yang, he found that the other party had no evil spirit. This shows that he is different from Qin Yi. He did not perform any so-called sacrificial ceremony. Grandpa wants to fight this time. Of course I have to follow. There was no regret in Qin Yuan's eyes. Qin Yang nodded. You are a good opponent. You too. Qin Yuan gritted his teeth and stood up desperately. After I die, please bury me and Jia Langma together. Qin Yuan grinned. Don't worry. After Qin Yang agreed, he swung the knife and chopped off Qin Yuan's head. Then, he shouted loudly in the distance. Qi Yi, I killed your grandson. Qi Yi was fighting with Song Yechen. Hearing this, his emotions did not fluctuate at all. Your grandson is dead. How can you be so indifferent? Song Yechen tore the tentacles that Qi Yi was attacking. As long as I turn into a source seed, I can master the true meaning of the other shore. Then I will naturally be able to revive Qi Yuan. Qi Yi said lightly. You don't have this chance. Song Yechen shouted loudly. His figure flashed quickly, constantly dodging the attacking tentacles, and his right claws suddenly grabbed Qi Yi's face. Green tiger shattering cloud strike. Qi Yi looked calm, but his lower abdomen suddenly swelled up. Even the entire chest cavity was swollen. First, the skin could not withstand such a big change and cracked fiercely. Then it was the muscles and bones. A bloody flower stamen the size of a basin appeared in Qi Yi's lower abdomen. At the moment, when Song Yechen attacked, the flower stamen suddenly opened, revealing messy and weird teeth. Song Yechen really didn't expect Qi Yi to have such a change, but he didn't have time to retract his attack. Break. Song Yechen gritted his teeth and shouted. The tiger claws hit the bloody stamen fiercely. With a bang, the bloody stamen was shattered. But Song Yechen's right wrist was almost bitten to pieces, broken in half, quite bloody. Swish, swish, swish. The next moment, Qi Yi controlled the tentacles to attack from all directions and hit Song Yechen fiercely. Go to hell. At this moment, Qin Yang, with blood all over his face, appeared behind Qi Yi, and the cold abyss knife slashed out coldly and fiercely. Qin Yang cut off 5 or 6 tentacles growing on Qi Yi's back with one knife. Song Yechen took the opportunity to find an opportunity and dodge away. It hurts. After Song Yechen moved away from Qi Yi, he screamed. He actually tore his half-broken palm apart alive. At this time, Qin Yang had already fought fiercely with Qi Yi. Qi Yi's tentacles whipped Qin Yang frantically and densely. Qin Yang was seriously injured in the battle with Qi Yuan. Qi Yi's strength was even more exaggerated than Qi Yuan. Qin Yang was whipped several times, and his muscles and bones were about to burst. It can only be like this. How can a thing that brings disaster to the people survive? Song Yechen's eyes became extremely determined. He took out a pill and swallowed it. Boom. At this moment, Qin Yang seemed to sense something. He turned around suddenly. He saw a pair of fierce blue-black tiger moose. Chapter 240. Things have changed. Ouch. At this moment, Qin Yang felt a strong and ferocious aura from Song Yechen. This aura was somewhat different from the aura of ordinary warriors. As if it could affect the world suddenly blew up a green wind, boosting Song Yechen's momentum. The wind from the tiger. The wind became more and more violent, and sand and rocks flew everywhere. Martial Saint? Qin Yang looked horrified. The next realm after the Grand Master is the Martial Saint. According to Qin Yang's understanding these days, the realms of Martial Saint and Grand Master are completely different. The realm of the Grand Master is when a person's blood, body, spirit, and spirit reach their peak. The Martial Saint, on the other hand, is promoted from an individual to the world. Because his own power is too huge, he can even control some of the power of the world. No, this is only a half-step Martial Saint. Song Xixiao should have used drugs to stimulate his potential, so he barely reached the realm of a half-step Martial Saint. Qin Yang soon discovered something abnormal. The power of the world appeared, but Song Yechen seemed unable to control it or use it. Bang! Qi Yi seemed to feel a strong threat from Song Yechen. Several tentacles intertwined and suddenly pulled Qin Yang away. Soul burning pill. Song Yechen, are you really going to fight me to death? Just for a group of people who have nothing to do with you? Qi Yi stared at Song Yechun with a puzzled look. He also has a soul-burning pill. This kind of pill has a huge medicinal power. It will burn the human body's essence and blood, greatly enhancing the strength of the person who takes it. But because the medicinal power is too huge, once the medicinal power disappears, it is difficult for people to survive. Even if they survive, they will probably become useless. Qi Yi, why did you repel the invasion of the Nanmang aliens? Song Yechun asked back. I'm not as great as you. As a general, I should kill the enemy on the battlefield and win the world's fame. Now as an old man, I'm just trying to survive. Qi Yi said lightly. You are no longer a human being. Song Yechun shook his head. We are the same kind of people, but our ways are different. After Qi Yi finished speaking, the tentacles behind him swept up countless strong winds and hit Song Yechun fiercely. Swish! Qin Yang suddenly appeared in front of Song Yechun. His eyes were cold and bloody, holding the knife with both hands, and roared, Black Sea devouring wave slash. Qin Yang's injuries had long been serious, and the yin fu hooked by the blood and qi in his body burst out with stronger power. The extremely cold knife light slashed out like a rolling wave. The power to suppress evil burst out fiercely, cutting off the tentacles one by one. Before this, Qin Yang had never burst out the power to suppress evil. Because Qi Yuan was not an evil spirit, the power to suppress evil was useless. But facing Qi Yi, Qin Yang kept a trick. This trick was not released until now. Qin Yang also burst out all his strength. Qi and blood, Bidao Zen Wu Yuan Qi, and spirit all burst out in an instant. He was like a dragon, turning the rivers and seas upside down. Finally, he stopped 1 meter away from Qi Yi. Song Si Xiao, I can only send you here. Qin Yang roared. All the strength in his body was completely exhausted at this moment, and he suddenly stabbed the Hanua knife into the ground to support himself. Enough. Song Yechun's voice came from behind him. The next moment, Qin Yang felt a blue tiger flash before his eyes. A figure suddenly appeared in front of Qi Yi, with his left hand open, 5 fingers pointing at the blue-black airflow, and suddenly grabbed Qi Yi's head. Blue tiger split the sky. Song Yechun also burst out all his strength. Even his body was visibly cracked and shattered. This burst of power was too strong, far beyond the limit that Song Yechun could bear. Because the power that Song Yechun possessed at this moment was not from himself, but from the burning soul pill. Qi Yi's lower abdomen bulged again, and a bloody flower stamen suddenly shot out. Boom. But this time, Song Yechun's power was too terrifying. The void seemed to be floating with blue-black turbulence. The bloody flower stamen was crushed by a claw. Song Yechun's left claw was able to hit Qi Yi's head hard. No. Qi Yi screamed, but his head was still smashed by Song Yechun's claws. But his body did not fall down. Song Yechun looked at the headless body in front of him, blood gushing out of his mouth. Before Qi Yi died, several tentacles shot out from his lower abdomen again, piercing Song Yechun's body and crushing his internal organs. Enough. Enough. Song Yechun sighed and closed his eyes. In Qin Yang's eyes, the bodies of Song Yechun and Qi Yi slowly fell down. Qin Yang shook his head slightly. He didn't even have the strength to move now, so he could only wait quietly in place. My lord. Seeing Qi Yi and Song Yechun die together, Li Chen, who was attacking the city, went completely crazy. All of you must pay for your lives to my lord. Li Chen's face was distorted. What a loyal dog. You go down to accompany Qi Yi first. Zuan Khan sneered. He made a gesture with both hands and suddenly pointed at Li Chen. Buzz buzz buzz. A card 9 suddenly appeared above Li Chen's head, with 4 red dots and 3 white dots, smashing on Li Chen's head like a tombstone. Zuan Khan carefully prepared a blow. In addition, Li Chen lost his calm mind, and did not react. Bang. His head was smashed by the card 9. Kill. Qi Yi is dead. Someone shouted loudly. The BGO army, which had lost its backbone, was quickly defeated. However, these BGO army soldiers seemed to be loyal to Qi Yi, and no one surrendered until they were all destroyed. Zhao's inmost Taoist robe was stained with blood, and there were corpses under his feet. He couldn't tell who was the enemy or the friend. He sat on the battlement, watching the sunset sinking in the sky, with a smile on his face. You guy, you're not dead. Yet he saw a ruin in the distance. Qin Yang also smiled at him with blood on his face. The battle of the BGO Army's rebellion was finally over. After the people on the street learned that the BGO army was annihilated, they came to the street in groups to celebrate, constantly burning firecrackers. But the aftermath was far from over. More than half of the people in the Sky Patrol Department and the aristocratic families were killed or injured, and the casualties were heavy, especially in the Sky Patrol Department. The Chief Song Yechun and the Deputy Chief Zhao Dingshan died. Len Kang was seriously injured and unconscious. For a time, the Sky Patrol Department was leaderless. In the end, Zhu and Khan stepped forward to stabilize the situation. The major aristocratic families in the city also took a rest and tried their best to control the public security of Yangning Prefecture City and prevent it from falling into chaos. Half a month later, Yangning Prefecture Pier Ferry, Qin Yang recovered from his injuries after more than half a month of recuperation. Qin Yang, after I leave, the Yangning Sky Patrol Department will depend on you, Len Kang said in a deep voice, while standing on a small boat. He was still bandaged, and his face was pale. You'd better come back early. I can't bear this heavy responsibility. Qin Yang smiled bitterly. He didn't know what was going on. He closed himself off for half a month to recuperate, and as soon as he came out, he became the deputy chief of the Yangning Sky Patrol Department. I have to transport Si Xiao's coffin back to his hometown and report this matter to the Imperial City Sky Patrol Department. I'm afraid he won't be able to come back in a short time. Len Kang shook his head slightly. Chapter 241 Selection. In fact, after the destruction of the BGO army and the death of Qi Yi, the Sky Patrol Department uploaded the news to Daewoo Imperial City. The matter was of great importance, and the Sky Patrol Department of the Imperial City wanted Len Kang to bring the case file back in person. Len Kang had been recovering from his injuries these days, so he did not leave. Now that he is a little better, he wants to take the opportunity to send Song Yechun's coffin back to his hometown when he returns to Daewoo Imperial City. Because Song Yechun is from Dengling Prefecture, he is on his way back to Daewoo Imperial City from Yangning Prefecture. Fallen leaves return to their roots. Since Song Yechun is dead, Len Kang also wants to send Song Yechun back to his hometown. Try your best. You know my personality. I can't care about these things at all. If he is unhappy one day, he might just leave. Qin Yang shook his head. Shang Gunyun has promised me that she will serve as deputy chief with you. As for Wang Jiang of the demon slaying department, he has been working beside me for the past few years. He will help you deal with it. The patrol of the Bright Department will be handed over to Cui Fenglin. His ability is not that outstanding, but he is relatively reliable. Len Kang naturally arranged everything for Qin Yang. That being said, after this battle, all the major forces in Yangning Prefecture have been severely damaged. Now that evil spirits are growing everywhere, I'm afraid that they can't be suppressed. Qin Yang shook his head. Just do your best. Len Kang had no way to deal with this. In the war half a month ago, not only the Patrol of the Sky, but also the major families suffered heavy losses. Xianyang Sect, Phi Temple and Lishu Sword Sect were directly destroyed. The number of masters in Yangning Prefecture has dropped sharply. This impact has only not been revealed for the time being. As long as time goes on, the world will become more chaotic. Even the city of Yangning Prefecture may not be as peaceful as before. This kind of trend cannot be stopped by one or two people. Okay, don't waste time. Qin Yang smiled. Yes. Len Kang clasped his fists. Seeing this, the boatman paddled. Only after watching the boat slowly leave the dock and disappear on the river did Qin Yang turn around and leave. As soon as he returned to the Xiangsan division, he called Wang Jiang and Cui Fenglin over. Wang Jiang was a rough man with thick hair and beard, and had a pair of huge hands with amazing palm power. Cui Fenglin looked much more ordinary, wearing a blue shirt, and looked like a gentle businessman. Wang Jiang, from today, you will temporarily take over the head of the Department of Killing Evils. Cui Fenglin, you will temporarily take over the head of the Department of Patrol. Qin Yang said directly without any nonsense. Although Len Kang had already made a greeting before. But when they heard the official appointment, they still showed joy on their faces. Thank you, Deputy Chief Qin. The two clasped their fists and said, okay. Don't say polite words to me. Put the Department of Killing Evils and the Department of Patrolling Ming back into operation as soon as possible. Qin Yang said. He is now only in charge of the Department of Patrolling Ming and the Department of Killing Evils. The military prison department is controlled by Shangwen Yun. As for the Ministry of Internal Affairs, it is now in charge of the Taoist Fiayu of the White Crane Temple, Zuanling Department or the old guy Zuan Qian. Yes, sir, the two said in a deep voice. After announcing the appointment, Qin Yang headed towards Lingxin Tower. In fact, Leng Kang asked Qin Yang to be the deputy chief, mainly to let him take up a position, and he didn't expect him to take care of anything. Because now as long as Qin Yang's name is released, it will be a great deterrent. Especially after he killed Qi Yun, his reputation has become famous. Moreover, with the death of Song Yejun and Qi Yi, Qin Yang has become the #1 master in Yangning Prefecture in the eyes of many people. Qin Yang was also happy with this, and walked casually in the Zunshan division. Open the panel. Host, Qin Yang Bidao Zen Wuzu and Gong, Level 1. 556/800, Yanayang Life and Death Talisman Sutra, Level 7, Yin Talisman. 920/1200 Yang Talisman. 965/1200, Evil Dragon Swallowing Evil Blade, perfect, extremely evil, Dragon Elephant Fist, perfect, unparalleled in strength. During this period, let's practice Bidao Zen Wuzu and Gong and Yin-Yang Life and Death Talisman Sutra to perfection. I also need to find another sword technique and body technique. Qin Yang muttered to himself. Fu Hei Hao Mansion, Blackfish Tower, and the other Shore sect have all been dealt with. For the people of Yangxing Prefecture, the next period may be even more chaotic. But for Qin Yang, this should be a relatively peaceful period, allowing him to calm down and practice. In the half-month battle, Qin Yang killed Qi Yun and assisted Song Yejun in killing Qi Yi. These contributions will naturally not be in vain. In the end, Leng Kang gave him 4,000 contribution points. In order to persuade Qin Yang to serve as the deputy chief, Leng Kang gave him another 2,000 contribution points. This made Qin Yang suddenly have 6,000 contribution points, which seemed to be very rich. But in fact, it could only be exchanged for 1 Tangso and martial arts plus 1 first-class skills. Came to Lingxin Tower. Qin Yang chose Tangso and swordsmanship. In Lingxin Tower, Tangso and level martial arts usually have about 4,000 to 5,000 contribution points. The name of 8 desolate swords is quite domineering. Golden Snake Mad Sword seems to be quite good. Sunset Swordsmanship. What a big tone. This Tangso and swordsmanship is indeed much stronger than the first class swordsmanship. The most critical point is that Tangso and martial arts has a hint of the charm of communicating the power of heaven and earth. This is a huge advantage that first class swordsmanship cannot match. 9 Swords of the Desolate Sea. Qin Yang saw a swordsmanship wrapped in a dark blue book cover. He picked up the swordsmanship. In the mythological era, before the birth of life in heaven and earth, there was a desolate sea. This desolate sea is the source of death and the starting point of life. The 9 Swords of the Desolate Sea is a sword technique that a martial saint discovered after finding some ruins of the desolate sea and feeling the special deep meaning of death. This sword technique is deep and majestic. Its characteristic is to devour all the opponent's moves and annihilate them. 5,000 contribution points. Qin Yang glanced at the wooden sign hanging on the sword technique, but didn't care. He was willing to spend as much contribution points as he could find a sword technique that suited his heart. After choosing the sword technique, it was the body technique. He only had more than 1,000 contribution points left, and he could only exchange for a first-rate body technique. But his own Iron Step was a third-rate body technique, and upgrading to a first-rate body technique was a huge improvement. However, there were too many first-rate body techniques, and Qin Yang was dazzled. Let's choose a body technique that focuses on explosive power. Qin Yang finally chose a body technique called Crazy Thunder Step. This body technique emphasizes the body as violent as thunder and the momentum as heavy as 1,000 pounds. He felt that it should be able to produce more terrifying power when combined with the thunder palm. After the selection, Qin Yang exchanged the 2 skills. This time, his contribution value hit the bottom again. But Qin Yang didn't feel any regret. After returning to the room, Qin Yang didn't choose to practice the 9 Swords of the Desolate Sea first. He thought he should start with the easy ones, and put the difficult ones like the 9 Swords of the Desolate Sea aside for later practice. The main difficulty of the thunder step is the resonance between the key and the leg muscles. The so-called thunder refers to the resonance of the two, which instantly bursts out with thunder-like power. However, Qin Yang's control of his muscles and ki is quite exquisite, and he quickly grasped some tricks. Chapter 242 Dundee. 5 days later. In the left corner of the training chamber, Qin Yang stood casually, without any signs of exerting force or movement. The next moment, his leg muscles suddenly swelled, and the blood and ki mixed with the vital energy resonated violently, forming a terrible force. Boom. Qin Yang's huge body swept out like a thunderbolt. In less than a moment, he crossed nearly 20 meters, and came to the right wall of the training chamber. He was only 10 centimeters away from hitting the wall. Of course, this also shows Qin Yang's control over his own strength. Finally, I caught that ray of ki. Qin Yang smiled slightly. After a few days of thinking, he finally tried out the crazy thunder step. When he opened the panel, the 3 words crazy thunder step appeared. Crazy thunder step, getting started, 1/700, get familiar with it again. Qin Yang did not intend to put too much energy into this technique. He only needed to burst out skills to make up for his shortcomings. He would practice and improve slowly in the future. After practicing for a few more days, Qin Yang set his sights on the secret book of the 9 swords of the Wild Sea. He calmed down and opened the book of 9 swords of the Desolate Sea. The moves and routines of this sword technique are not much more complicated than those of the evil dragon swallowing evil sword. Just like what Lu Shengaiu had said to him before. When practicing martial arts, the emphasis is on artistic conception rather than moves. No matter how complicated or fancy the moves are, they are vulnerable in front of the absolute spiritual realm. The artistic conception of the 9 swords of the Desolate Sea is very strange, containing various emotions such as desolation, death, deep loneliness, etc. Practitioners need to feel these emotions before they can practice the 9 swords of the Desolate Sea. When Qin Yang practiced the Bidao Zen Wuzhu and Gong, he once comprehended the artistic conception of death. The introduction to this sword technique is even simpler than Qin Yang imagined. It seems that I made the right choice. This spiritual realm is connected. Qin Yang closed the secret book of 9 swords of the Desolate Sea. He chose this sword technique because the artistic conception of this sword technique was consistent with the Bidao Zen Wuzhu and Gong he practiced. But now, after reading the 9 swords of the Desolate Sea, he found that it was more in line with his imagination than he had imagined. It seems that I was wrong. Perhaps the 9 swords of the Desolate Sea is easier to get started. Qin Yang stood up and drew the cold abyss sword. The so-called 9 swords of the Desolate Sea naturally has 9 ultimate kills. However, these 9 ultimate kills require the basic sword moves to be mastered before they can be comprehended. Qin Yang's mind once again recalled the basic moves of the 9 swords of the Desolate Sea. In a trance, a little man appeared in his mind and practiced these moves. And Qin Yang also entered a strange state, and his movements were exactly the same as the little man in his mind. Swish, swish, swish. The cold sword light continued to bloom in the training chamber. Compared with the previous evil dragon swallowing sword, there was an extra sense of desolation and death. And the sword light did not stop at all, as if the endless deep sea annihilated this training chamber. This is a terrifying part of the 9 swords of the Desolate Sea. Because the Desolate Sea itself is boundless, the concept of area does not exist in the Desolate Sea. So the moves of the 9 swords of the Desolate Sea are also like this, endless and will not be exhausted. After half an hour, Qin Yang stopped. He panted slightly and opened the panel again. Host, Qin Yang Bidao Zen Wuzhu and Gong, Level 1, 556/800, Yin Yang Life and Death Talisman Sutra, Level 7, Yin Talisman. 920/1200 Yang Talisman. 965/1200, 9 Swords of the Desolate Sea, Entry, 1000th, Crazy Thunder Step, Entry, 1/700, Evil Dragon Swallowing Evil Blade, Perfect, Extreme Evil. I didn't expect to get started so quickly. It seems that this sword technique is naturally compatible with me, Qin Yang said to himself. In addition to proficiency, the skills also depend on whether they are compatible with the practitioner. This point also greatly affects the power of martial arts. After that, Qin Yang practiced Bidao Zen Wuzhu and Gong and the 9 Swords of the Desolate Sea. Of course, because he mastered the ability to do two things at once. While practicing Bidao Zen Wuzhu and Gong, Yin Yang Shengxi Fujing was also rapidly improving. Yang Fu continuously nourished the body, making his physique and bones stronger and more terrifying. The night was as cool as water. A carriage broke the silence of the street and sped past. Woof woof woof. The movement of the carriage caused a few dogs to bark. Not long after, the carriage stopped at a mansion. "Brother Lu, let's drink again tomorrow. Let's stop here tonight." A man's voice sounded. "No problem." A drunk figure walked out of the carriage. "Then I'll go back. Otherwise, if you go back late, you'll be scolded again." A young man leaned out of the window and waved. "Let's go." The drunk figure waved his hand casually. Soon, the wheels of the carriage started turning again and disappeared into the dark street. This damn old Luo is too timid. This young master hasn't had enough fun yet, and he's in a hurry to come back. I won't go to play with him next time. The drunk figure muttered. His name is Lu Yang, and he is the eldest son of the Lu family. In Yangning City, the Lu family can only be regarded as an ordinary family, doing some antique business. And this Lu Yang is very similar to Qin Yang, before he traveled through time. He is a playboy, uneducated, causing trouble on the streets during the day, and going to brothels at night. After complaining, Lu Yang staggered to the front of the mansion and shouted, "This young master is back. Hurry up and open the door for me." If it were in the past, the old man who was guarding the door would naturally open the door immediately when he heard Lu Yang's voice, for fear of being scolded for being slow. But this time, no matter how Lu Yang shouted, no one opened the door. "You are such a good old horse. You don't even open the door for this young master, right? I will whip you 10 times later." Lu Yang shouted angrily. The smell of alcohol came to his head again, making Lu Yang gradually lose his reason. He actually wanted to push the red painted door open with his hands. Creaking then, the door of Lu's mansion was really pushed open by him. Even the drunk Lu Yang was stunned for a moment. "Is the door not closed?" Lu Yang staggered into the mansion. It was pitch black in the mansion, and not even a lantern was lit. "It's strange. Where did all the people die now?" Lu Yang shook his head, but he drank too much, so he just wanted to go back to his room and sleep. Fortunately, the moonlight was good tonight, and he could barely see some outlines. In addition, he grew up here since he was a child and was too familiar with it. Even if his mind was not clear, he could still find the way back to the room. When Lu Yang came to a corridor, the moonlight was blocked, and the light was even darker. He walked unsteadily. Ouch. Suddenly, Lu Yang felt as if he had hit an iron wall and fell directly to the ground. This finally made him sober up. "What is it?" Lu Yang covered his forehead and got up from the ground. An old and skinny face appeared in Lu Yang's eyes. "You are such a good old man. It's fine if you don't open the door for me. How dare you block my way?" Lu Yang was immediately furious and slapped him hard. Chapter 243 Mansion. With a bang, the old, skinny face was motionless. But Lu Yang screamed. He felt like he hit a hard steel plate, and his hand bones seemed to be cracked. "You guy, why are you so thick-skinned?" Lu Yang was so angry that he raised his leg and kicked it hard. Bang, another scream. This time, Lu Yang felt like his calf bone was broken, and he felt a burst of pain and grimaced. The severe pain finally made Lu Yang's drunkenness dissipate. He realized that there was something wrong with the doorman, Leomar. Leomar was just an old man. How could he be a hard kicker? Moreover, Lu Yang reacted and found that Leomar seemed to be unable to speak. He looked carefully, and his scalp numbed. He didn't look closely just now. Now he saw that Leomar's skin was abnormally pale. That kind of paleness was the paleness of a dead person. His two eyes were dull and lifeless, like the eyes of a paperman. No matter how you look at it, Leomar now looks like a standing corpse. But how can a corpse stand up? Ah! Lu Yang screamed and turned to run. He ran like crazy in the Lu mansion, falling down and getting up again. When he regained some of his sanity, he looked back and no longer saw the gatekeeper Leomar, and finally breathed a sigh of relief. Why did this mansion become like this? No, I have to go talk to my father. Every time something happened to Lu Yang, the first person he thought of was his father. He looked up and found that he had come to his father Lu Sangbei's courtyard. He hurried to the door and knocked hard. "Dad, Something big happened. That gatekeeper Leoma has become so weird. Liu Yang shouted loudly. Soon, Liu Yang heard footsteps. This time, Liu Yang finally breathed a sigh of relief. Creak, sure enough, the door opened quickly. An old and skinny face slowly poked out from the dark room. It was the face of the gatekeeper Leoma. Liu Yang was frightened again. His head went black, and he was actually scared to death. When Liu Yang woke up, he found himself lying on the bed. My head hurts so much. Liu Yang covered his head ached. Soon, he remembered what happened last night. His face changed drastically, and he was about to get up. Creak. A figure pushed the door open. It was Liu Yang's father, Liu Songbei. Father, there's something wrong with that doorman, Leoma. I came back last night and saw that he was very strange. Liu Yang said anxiously. Unexpectedly, Liu Songbei frowned. What nonsense are you talking about? It was Leoma who found you drunk and unconscious in front of the mansion last night and asked someone to send you back. If you drink so much again, I will break your legs. Liu Songbei snorted coldly. Liu Yang was stunned and said in surprise, did I drink too much? Of course. You should recuperate in the mansion for the next 2 days, and you don't have to go anywhere. Liu Songbei seemed very busy, and after saying this, he hurried away. Am I really drunk? Liu Yang scratched his head, not understanding. Finally, he wanted to go out of the room to see Leoma, but before he could go out, he was stopped by 2 guards. Liu Yang realized that this time Liu Songbei seemed to be very angry about his drunkenness and sent someone to watch him and not let him go out. Really? I'm going to be kept in seclusion for a few days again. Liu Yang had no choice but to return to the room. He knew that once his father gave the order, it would be useless, no matter how he made a fuss. After such a fuss, Liu Yang didn't have the energy to investigate what happened last night, whether it was true or not. He lay on the bed, obviously with a severe headache, but fell asleep weakly. Until the evening. Liu Yang finally woke up from hunger. The after effects of this wine are too strong. I slept until the evening again. You almost starved me to death. Liu Yang got up cursing. At this time, the sun had completely set. Only a faint red light remained in the sky. When Liu Yang pushed it open, he was stunned. The 2 guards who were responsible for guarding him were gone. Strange. Is he going to eat? Never mind. I'm going to starve to death. Let's find something to eat first. Liu Yang was hungry and hurried to the kitchen. Along the way, he didn't meet any servants or guards. What's going on? Why is he missing again? Liu Yang thought of his dream last night. His eyes trembled and his heart was in a mess. Bang. He didn't notice a figure standing in front of him and he bumped into it. When Liu Yang fell to the ground, he was stunned for a moment. This is in the corridor. Wait. When he looked up, he saw the outline of the figure hidden in the darkness, and he was shocked. The face was pale and old, and the eyes were dull. It was the old Ma who was guarding the door. At this moment, it was exactly the same as last night. Liu Yang was so scared that he ran away in a panic. Impossible. Am I dreaming again? No, impossible. Liu Yang's mind was in a mess. When he regained consciousness, he found himself in the courtyard, where his father was again. Is it possible? Liu Yang recalled what happened last night and his face changed. This time he did not knock on the door. Instead, he walked away from the courtyard and ran back to his room. When he opened the door, an old and strange face suddenly appeared in his eyes. Liu Yang suddenly woke up from the bed. His forehead was covered with cold sweat, and his face was pale. Creak. Liu Yang looked over with horror. He saw his father Liu Songbei pushed open the door and walked in. Maybe there are ghost weapons in the city? Qin Yang, who had been in seclusion for more than a month, was finally called out. Yes, there is already a bronze medal evil killer missing in there. We are short of experts in the Sky Patrol department now, so we can only ask Deputy Chief Qin to make a decision. The new head of the evil killing department, Wang Jiang, clasped his fists and said, speaking of the bronze medal evil killer, I seem to be a bronze medal evil killer. Qin Yang remembered this. Deputy Chief Qin is joking. Wang Jiang said in surprise. Really? I haven't been promoted since I came to Yangning Prefecture. Qin Yang said softly. Then it may require a new chief to take office. Deputy Chief Qin can be promoted. Wang Jiang said. According to the rules of the Sky Patrol, only the bronze medal is left with a silver medal, which requires the confirmation of the chief, not the deputy chief, not to mention the temporary one like Qin Yang. It doesn't matter. It's just a title. Qin Yang didn't care about these, and got back to business. Tell me, what's the matter with the ghost weapon appearing in Yangning Prefecture? Wang Jiang said hurriedly. This matter was reported by the government. Recently, the public security in Yangning Prefecture has become worse and worse, and there are often thieves. A few days ago, a constable on duty was chasing a thief and disappeared mysteriously. According to the subsequent investigation, it was found that the constable was last seen chasing into a mansion and disappeared completely. The people in the government naturally continued to investigate and gradually discovered the weirdness of the mansion. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 244 Timing. This mansion is called Lu Mansion. It is a small or medium-sized force in the city. The owner, Lu Bossing, is a real power warrior. I didn't know until the constable disappeared near Lu Mansion after an investigation. No one from Lu Mansion has appeared for more than 10 days. I don't know what happened. The door is usually closed and never opened. Later, after the government reported the matter, I sent a demon killer to check it out. The result was still disappearing in Lu Mansion. Until I asked a spiritual master from the Zuanling department to investigate, I found that it might be caused by a ghost weapon. And this ghost weapon may be a medium-sized ghost weapon. Wang Jiang's face was serious. The birth of this medium-sized ghost weapon is not a trivial matter. For ordinary people, it is a natural disaster. If it is not suppressed in time, it is very likely to cause the death of more than 100,000 people. Not to mention that in a densely populated place like Yangning Prefecture, the pollution caused is even more serious. Medium-sized ghost weapon? Qin Yang raised his eyebrows. There was a village before, where a parent wanted a child too much, and held an evil ceremony, which led to the arrival of a ghost weapon, and destroyed the entire village. That ghost weapon was only a low level 1, and had not yet been promoted to a medium level 1. But he remembered what Zhao Xinmo had said before. Ghost weapons can also be promoted. If the ghost weapon is allowed to continue to devour pollution in Yangzhou City, it will probably soon become a high-level ghost weapon, and it may even transform into a ghost species. You know, Qi Yi had not yet transformed into a ghost species, but his strength was so strong. Even if Song Yechen swallowed the elixir and reached the realm of a half-step martial saint, he could only die together. So when he heard the 4 words medium-level ghost weapon, Qin Yang knew that he could not delay. He quickly picked up the Hanua knife and whispered, "You go and notify Zhao Xinmo, and he and I will solve it personally." Yes. Wang Jiang clasped his fists. Soon, Qin Yang and Zhao Xinmo left the patrol department. It was exactly noon. Yangningzhou City was too large, and the Lu Mansion was far away from the patrol department, and it was necessary to pass through several large areas to reach it. Along the way, Qin Yang could clearly feel that Yangningzhou City was a little different from before. There were more or less gang members wandering around the streets. The people seemed to be very angry, either quarreling or fighting. There were obviously more beggars and vagrants than before. This was the sequel of the Bgoo army siege. Many noble families suffered heavy losses. In order to make up for the losses, they could only increase the oppression of ordinary people. Due to the lack of manpower, they could only control the gangs, which further led to chaos in Yangning Prefecture. The government also turned a blind eye to this, and did not interfere too much. This world is really going to be in chaos, Zhao Xinmo said lightly. It was difficult for the patrol department to intervene in these matters. In recent days, the staff was already short, and evil spirits appeared more frequently, and the staff could not be arranged. What's more, these things were the responsibility of the state government. It's just that the governor was too weak, and was completely controlled by the noble family. Qin Yang said nothing. When he arrived in front of Lu's mansion, he saw that the vicinity had been blocked by the Yamen runners. The people in the mansion next door did not dare to live there, and had left long ago. Meet Deputy Chief Qin. The person guarding the scene happened to be Zheng Yuanchao. Since the death of Shen Sangxiu, the Zheng family has surpassed the Shen family and ranked first among the 9 major families. Zheng Yuanchao is also a figure second only to the head of the Zheng family, Zheng Yuanshi. But in front of Qin Yang, he did not dare to make any rash moves and appeared respectful. There was no way. Now Qin Yang's reputation has become well known after the Battle of the Bgao Army Siege. He is recognized as the best master in Yangning Prefecture. How is the situation in Lu Mansion? Qin Yang asked. There is still no change. It seems that nothing will happen as long as you don't go in. Zheng Yuanchao replied. Qin Yang looked at Zhao Xinmo. Zhao Xinmo took out a compass. The compass needle started to spin wildly. The next moment, the compass actually exploded directly. This it seems to be a medium level ghost weapon. Zhao Xinmo's eyes showed a strong interest. Then let's go in and take a look. Captain Zheng, please guard it for a while. Qin Yang said softly. Of course there is no problem. Deputy Chief Qin, be careful. Zheng Yuanchao clasped his fists and said. Qin Yang had no intention of entering through the main gate, so he jumped over the wall and went in. Zhao Xinmo followed him. Bang bang, 2 slight landing sounds. This Lu Mansion seems to have been dilapidated for a long time. Zhao Xinmo looked at the scene of Lu Mansion with a look of surprise. The courtyard was full of withered branches and leaves, the trees were withered, the buildings were rotten and moldy, and even some black fungi grew. Logically speaking, the people in Lu Mansion would not appear for more than 10 days. But it looked as if it had been abandoned for more than 10 years. It should be affected by the power of the ghost weapon. Qin Yang said casually. I wonder what the ghost weapon looks like this time. Zhao Xinmo became more and more curious. The two of them explored in this Lu Mansion. They walked into the hall first. The tables and chairs in the room were all rotten, the floor tiles were moldy, and there was a rotten smell. A corpse sat on the main seat, with 2 empty eye sockets looking at Qin Yang and Zhao Xinmo. The flesh and blood of the corpse were completely decayed, leaving only dry bones, and it was impossible to recognize its appearance. Why does this corpse look like it has been dead for decades? Zhao Xinmo muttered. Judging from the position, this dry bone may be the head of the Lu Mansion, Lu Songbei. Qin Yang said lightly. It may be true. Zhao Xinmo nodded, and then said, but this corpse does not seem to have turned into an evil spirit. 2 living people came in, and if the evil spirits were, they would probably pounce on them immediately. Maybe the ghost weapon is not here. Qin Yang said softly. Let's look for it first. Zhao Xinmo smiled. The two searched the hall, and found no clues about the ghost weapon. The corpse sitting on the main seat did not change from beginning to end. Finally, Qin Yang and Zhao Xinmo could only leave the hall and search other places. In a garden, they saw a corpse. The flesh and blood of the corpse was completely rotten, but there was a rusty broken knife beside it. This should be the missing evil killer. Qin Yang picked up the broken knife. There was a word Zhao engraved on the blade. The missing evil killer also happened to have the surname Zhao. What a pity. Zhao Xinmo shook his head slightly. Wait until I get rid of the ghost weapon, and then take your body back. Qin Yang put down the rusty iron knife and said softly. After that, the two found 2 more corpses in a corridor. According to the clues found on the corpses, they should be the constable and the wanted thief. In other words, everyone who entered the Lu Mansion before and after died, including the people in the Lu Mansion itself. It is estimated that no one survived. But when Qin Yang and Zhao Xinmo searched the entire Lu Mansion, they still did not find any traces of the ghost weapon. Wait until night. I think the timing is not right. Zhao Xinmo said lightly without leaving in a hurry. Chapter 245 Lu Yang. Zhao Xinmo has done a deep research on ghost weapons. Usually, ghost weapons prefer to appear in the dark night, when the yin energy is strong. It is still daytime now, which is why they can't find the ghost weapon. Then wait. Qin Yang also wanted to deal with this ghost weapon as soon as possible. The two found a place to sit down in Lu's mansion and chatted. After the Bgao army siege ended, Qi's body was also pulled back to the Zunshan division. I studied it before burning it. The flesh and blood structure is completely not human. Zhao Xinmo shared his research results with Qin Yang. Then what do you think the ghost species is? Qin Yang asked. I couldn't give you an answer before. But after studying Kiyi's body, I feel that this so-called ghost seed is like a force released by some existence in the void. Let me give you an analogy. The human world is like a clear river. One day, someone came from nowhere and dropped a drop of ink into the river. The ink instantly dissolved in the river and polluted the water. A drop of ink naturally won't cause any impact. But if the amount of ink released increases, it is very likely that the entire river will be polluted. Zhao Zinmo said softly. Qin Yang understood what Zhao Zinmo meant. This ghost weapon, ghost seed, is ink existence from the void, wants to pollute our world. Qin Yang roughly understood. The forbidden isolation technique is like a protective layer covering the river. It tries its best to block the ink and prevent it from falling into the human world. But after so many years, the protective layer formed by the forbidden isolation technique may also be polluted and corroded by the ink. So, holes appeared one by one. These holes are very small, and ghost species may still not be able to penetrate, but medium-level ghost weapons can. So this is why ghost weapons have appeared frequently in recent years. Zhao Zinmo said in a deep voice. Of course, this is just a figurative metaphor made by Zhao Zinmo, and the details are even more complicated and mysterious. But Qin Yang is not a spiritual master, so it would be better to use this popular statement. Qin Yang thought. In other words, the forbidden isolation technique is still being corroded. Yes, and after so many years, the forbidden isolation technique is probably corroded very seriously. After some time, it should be able to accommodate the appearance of high-level ghost weapons, and even ghost species can come directly. At that time, it will be a real disaster. Zhao Zinmo said in a heavy tone. Is there no way to repair the forbidden isolation technique? Qin Yang asked. Yes, I suspect now. Between the two dynasties of Daqian and Deu, someone strengthened the forbidden technique of isolating heaven and earth. But I can't get access to this secret. Zhao Zinmo said helplessly. Someone should know. Maybe someone is trying to repair it now. It's just that we don't know. Qin Yang said softly. Maybe not. Even if there is, I feel the success rate is not high. This world is destined to have a catastrophe. Zhao Zinmo shook his head. He seemed desperate. Qin Yang smiled. Then we can only rely on ourselves. Well, the former immortals and Buddhas have passed away. We can only rely on ourselves. Zhao Zinmo nodded. But he didn't say a word. Relying on yourself. Is it really okay? Zhao Zinmo didn't have an answer in his heart. Everything can only be known when the ghost species really descends. The two waited quietly. Soon, the sun set, and the sky was dark. The Lu mansion became even more gloomy and silent. Damn it. Let me out. A hysterical and desperate voice came from the depths of the mansion. It seems that it is really a matter of time. Qin Yang said with a smile. He was most afraid that there would be no changes in the Lu mansion after nightfall. If there were changes, it would be easy to solve. Ghost weapons are only thinking about continuous pollution and will not lie dormant. Zhao Zinmo shook his head. The two quickly went towards the hysterical roar. Soon, the two came to a corridor. A young man with a terrified face fled in a hurry. The two met at the corner. Lu Yang saw two figures appear in front of him, and he was so scared that his soul flew away that he fainted directly. This is all your fault. You scared them to death. Qin Yang said speechlessly. What does it have to do with me? It must be because you are too big and your eyes are cold. You can tell at a glance that you are not a good person. Zhao Zinmo retorted. Impossible. Qin Yang denied it directly, and then shook his head and said, this guy is too timid. He was scared to death. Carry him out of the courtyard first. Zhao Zinmo said. Then, Qin Yang lifted up Lu Yang's sleeve and dragged him out. When Lu Yang woke up, he felt a burning pain in his back and joints. Many parts of his clothes were worn out. Is this in the garden? Lu Yang glanced at the scene nearby and immediately knew where he was. Then the next moment, two figures appeared in his eyes. Who are you? Lu Yang's eyes were bloodshot, and he was terrified. Don't be afraid. We are from the patrol department. We came here to save you. Zhao Zinmo smiled. As for Qin Yang, he didn't say anything honestly. Really? I'm finally saved? Lu Yang was extremely excited when he heard what Zhao Zinmo said. Because he confirmed. These two people were indeed not from the Lu mansion, but outsiders. Don't get excited first. It's not easy to save you from the Lu mansion. Tell me, what happened in this mansion? Zhao Xinmo asked. Okay, my head is a little confused. Lu Yang adjusted for a long time before speaking again. I don't know. It was one night not long ago. I went out drinking with a few friends. When I came back, I found that there was no one in the mansion. Then I didn't care at the time until I met the gatekeeper Leomar. He became a dead man. I was so scared that I ran to find my father. In my father's room, I met Leomar again and fainted from fear. When I woke up, I was in my room. There were guards outside the door and I couldn't get out at all. It wasn't until after dark that the mansion became weird again and I could get out of the room. Then every night, I would meet many dead people and be locked in the room during the day. It kept repeating. I felt like I was going crazy. Lu Yang became more and more terrified as he spoke, and his emotions gradually got out of control. Zhao Xinmo asked him to calm down. Do you know if anyone in your Lu mansion became very strange before it became so weird? Qin Yang suddenly asked. No, it's just like usual. I don't know how a good home could become like this. Come and take me away. Lu Yang cried and begged. He was really driven crazy by torture these days. Chapter 246 Cycle. Every day when he woke up, he was trapped in the room, guarded by guards, and couldn't get out. He could stay awake less and less during the day, and could only wake up at night. But when it got dark, the Lu mansion would become extremely strange. There were strange dead people everywhere. Not only the old horse who was guarding the door. These days Lu Yang also saw the cook, the maid, as well as the eldest uncle, the second uncle, the cousin, and the cousin. These people turned into strange dead people. But they didn't hurt Lu Yang. When they saw him, they just stared at him. Can you take us to your room to have a look? Zhao Xinmo asked. What are you going to my room for? Take me out quickly. Lu Yang was anxious. Wouldn't it be a trap to go back to his room? The Lu mansion after dark is too strange, and it's impossible to get out. We have to wait until daytime. And from your description, your room should still be in a safe place. As long as you hide in your room for one night, we can take you out. Zhao Xinmo explained. Can you take me out tomorrow? Lu Yang seemed a little unconvinced. Don't worry. We want to survive, too. Zhao Xinmo smiled. Hearing this, Lu Yang felt relieved. Okay. But you guys walk in front. I'll show the way behind. I'm so scared of those weird dead people. Lu Yang said with fear in his eyes. Don't worry, we are here. Those guys don't dare to get close. Zhao Xinmo smiled. That's it. Qin Yang and Zhao Xinmo walked in front, while Lu Yang followed them carefully at the back door, looking around with evasive eyes. Passing through the corridor, all the way to the courtyard deep in Lu's mansion suddenly, Lu Yang shouted in horror, there is someone behind me. Qin Yang, who was walking in front, turned around and frowned. There is nothing behind you. Impossible. I just heard footsteps behind me. Lu Yang was so scared that he hid beside Zhao Xinmo. Zhao Xinmo also turned around, only to see a dark place, without any weird figures. Maybe you saw it wrong. Zhao Xinmo said softly. No, there was someone behind me just now. Lu Yang pulled Zhao Xinmo's sleeve, but didn't dare to look back. Just keep walking. Don't make a fuss. Qin Yang said coldly. After Qin Yang's shouting, Lu Yang calmed down a little. He didn't dare to walk out the back this time, but followed Zhao Xinmo. Qin Yang walked in front. As he walked, Qin Yang frowned slightly. He had excellent hearing, and could hear that in addition to Zhao Xinmo and Lu Yang, there was another footstep behind him. This footstep was very strange. It sounded very weak, but it gave people a heavy and stiff feeling. This means that Lu Yang was not hallucinating just now, but there was really someone following him from behind. Qin Yang suddenly stopped and turned around. He didn't have any signs, and didn't say hello to Zhao Xinmo, and almost bumped into him. What's wrong? Zhao Xinmo frowned. There's really one more person. Qin Yang said lightly. Zhao Xinmo hurriedly turned around. His eyes suddenly widened. Behind them, there really was a thin and old figure. The face was pale and strange, and the eyes looked at Qin Yang, and others with empty eyes. Old Ma, please let me go. When Lu Yang saw the strange figure, his knees were weak with fear. But the strange old man didn't move, just stared. Humph. How dare you appear in front of me? Qin Yang snorted coldly. He tapped his feet lightly. The floor exploded, as if it was hit by thousands of heavy hammers. The next moment, Qin Yang rushed to the doorman old Ma, and then hit him with an infinite heavy whip. Bang! In Liu Yang's horrified eyes, the old Ma's head was smashed by Qin Yang's palm. Bang! Then Qin Yang kicked again. The old Ma's stomach was kicked to pieces by Qin Yang, and the body turned into a cannonball and flew out. Boom. Liu Yang only saw the body of the old Ma disappear in the black clothes, and then heard many loud noises. He could even feel the ground shaking. Zhao Xinmo was used to it, and said to Liu Yang with a smile, "Don't worry, ordinary evil spirits can't threaten us." "That's great." Liu Yang was ecstatic. He felt that, as long as tomorrow morning, he should be able to leave Lu's house. After dealing with the doorman Liu Ma, the three continued to move forward. This time they finally came to Liu Yang's room. "You guys be careful. According to past experience, once this door is opened, there may be another weird dead person." Liu Yang reminded. "It's okay." Qin Yang opened the door casually. A fat and pale face stretched out from the room weirdly. "It's the cook." Liu Yang was terrified. The next moment, he saw Qin Yang suddenly picked up the cook with one hand, slammed him to the ground, raised his right leg and trampled hard. Boom. The weird cook's head was directly crushed by Qin Yang's foot. Zhao Xinmo seemed to have expected it long ago, and his figure flashed back. When the weird cook's brain burst out, he dodged it. But Liu Yang did not dodge. His face was full of brain matter, which was so smelly that he vomited it out. Ugh. Liu Yang vomited for a long time before he recovered, and then wiped the dirt off his face with his sleeve. "Let's go. There may be more evil spirits later," Qin Yang said lightly. He pushed the door open and entered. Zhao Xinmo and Liu Yang followed closely. "Did you make this straw man?" Qin Yang's eyes flickered. In the depths of the room, he saw a shrine. There were 2 red candles burning slowly in front of the shrine, reflecting the things inside. Qin Yang could see clearly. That thing was a straw man, covered in blood and minced meat. "What straw man? Where is there a straw man in my house?" Liu Yang asked curiously. He seemed to be unable to see the shrine in the house. Zhao Xinmo looked at the furnishings in the room thoughtfully, and smiled. "Don't worry, this guy's dazzled. There is no straw man." Qin Yang narrowed his eyes and whispered, "Maybe I saw it wrong." Liu Yang was relieved. "Don't scare me, 2 big brothers." At this time, Liu Yang came to the desk and picked up a broken ancient book. The Curse of Grudges. "Brother Liu, what is the content of this book?" Zhao Xinmo asked curiously. "The Curse of Grudges? I don't know. I don't read books at all." Liu Yang shook his head. "Really?" Zhao Xinmo put the book down. Then he walked to the shrine and looked at the bloody straw man. The red candles flickered, making the straw man look even more weird. "You have such a deep resentment towards your father, Liu Yang. How much do you hate him?" Zhao Xinmo suddenly turned around and asked. "What do you mean by hatred? What do you mean by that?" Liu Yang frowned and asked. "Have you really forgotten?" Qin Yang smiled and took out an account book from his arms. This was given to him by Wang Jiang when he walked out of the Sky Patrol office. Chapter 247 Rebellion. "This is the bill from Changxing Casino. You lost tens of thousands of taels of silver in Changxing Casino 2 months ago, and you seem to have never paid back this money," Qin Yang said calmly. "Tens of thousands of taels of silver? How can I, the great master Liu, pay it back?" Liu Yang frowned. "That's what you said, but you don't have any money at all. Your gambling debt is usually paid by Lu Songbei for you, but this debt has not been paid for so long. Is it because Lu Songbei doesn't want to pay it back for you?" Qin Yang narrowed his eyes. "How is it possible? I'm his only son. How could he not pay my debt for me? How could that be?" Lu Songbei became emotional, but Qin Yang was more excited than him. He picked up the curse book and shouted, "It's because your father felt that he couldn't indulge you anymore, so he didn't pay your debt. But you also felt resentful because of this. I don't know where you found this curse book and used the evil magic in it. You want to curse your father to death and inherit all the family property. Isn't that right?" Lu Songbei's face showed an extremely resentful look, and he grinned. "That old guy deserves to die. It's just a few tens of thousands of taels. Why doesn't he help me pay it back?" Qin Yang smiled and said, "Are you finally not pretending?" Hoo-hoo, the red candle flickered with a strange light. Liu Yang's body underwent strange changes. His flesh and blood quickly rotted, and sharp scarlet wood thorns grew on his fingernails, emitting a bloody smell, and roared, "You! Stay here forever. Just you?" Qin Yang roared wildly, his muscles bulged, and he tore his clothes apart, turning into a terrifying dragon and swooping out. Liu Yang waved his claws, trying to tear Qin Yang into pieces. Boom. The next moment, a huge fist like a heavy artillery came crashing down, sending out a dull fist wind. Liu Yang screamed, both arms were broken, and his body suddenly retreated. Qin Yang twisted his waist, and his right leg swung out like a heavy whip. The rotation instantly formed a terrible force. A roundhouse kick hit Liu Yang's waist and abdomen fiercely. Qin Yang did not feel the kick on flesh and blood, but more like kicking a ball of straw. The power was completely drained. Liu Yang grinned, and the broken arm was connected again, swinging the scarlet wood thorn towards Qin Yang's eyes. Qin Yang flashed his side face lightly, and took advantage of the situation to pull out the Hanyu knife, and slashed fiercely with an extremely evil heartless slash. The fierce knife light filled the room. Bidao Zenwu's vitality, wrapped in the intention of suppressing evil, easily cut Liu Yang's head with a puff. The moment Liu Yang's head flew up, the Hanyu knife continued to stab and slash wildly. Liu Yang's entire body was chopped into countless pieces. There was no flesh and blood in his body, only rotten black straw. Liu Yang, who only had a head left, was not dead yet, and was about to rush towards Qin Yang. Puff. A sharp platinum knife light pierced through it fiercely. The power of suppressing evil was poured into air. Liu Yang's head screamed and turned into ashes. After killing Liu Yang, Qin Yang and Zhao Zinmo's expressions were not relaxed. Because the real terrifying thing was the bloody straw man. The two looked back. The straw man who had been quietly staying in the shrine suddenly laughed strangely. Hehe. The next moment, the shrine exploded. Qin Yang heard the sound of air squeezing and whistling. Be careful. He grabbed Zhao Zinmo and dodged. The next moment, the house was squeezed by some terrifying force, exploded fiercely, and turned into rubble and bricks all over the sky. Fortunately you reacted quickly. Zhao Zinmo looked at the ruins of the house with lingering fear. This guy is quite big. Qin Yang grinned. He saw a bloody grass man more than 3 meters tall standing in the ruins. The grass man was covered with blood and flesh, and it smelled extremely fishy. He held a pale mace in both hands. The mace seemed to be made of bones, and the spikes were scarlet wood spikes, and even permeated with blood, which was very bloody. This is a medium level ghost weapon. But you should be fine. Zhao Zinmo smiled. Qin Yang looked at the bloody grass man and smiled. It's just right to use him to try out a new sword technique I've practiced. The next moment, the 3 flowers gathered at the top of the head, and the fierceness was directly opened. The muscles and body expanded wildly, and the large blood vessels were twisted and ferocious, fierce and ferocious. In terms of physique, it was not much worse than the bloody grass man. The bloody grass man looked at Qin Yang who was rushing over. His 2 small eyes flashed blood red, and he swung the mace and smashed it. Qin Yang grinned, holding the Hanyu knife in both hands, and slashed forward. Boom. The knife and the stick collided fiercely. Rumble. The terrifying power was transmitted to the ground. The ground of the entire Lu mansion shook violently. Qin Yang took a step back slightly. The bloody grass man took 3 steps back. That's all the strength? Qin Yang laughed disdainfully and used the wild sea knife technique and rushed forward directly. For a moment, the knife light was like the sea, but it concealed the desolate and deadly intention. Magnificent, deep, and desperate. The bloody grass man seemed to be drawn into an endless sea and could not break free. It swung the mace frantically, trying to get rid of Qin Yang's knife force, but it could not do it. Dead sea floating and sinking. Suddenly, Qin Yang roared. The knife light that seemed like the deep sea suddenly condensed into a dark and desperate dead knife light. This is the first killer knife technique among the wild sea 9 knives. Qin Yang was able to comprehend this sword technique so quickly, all thanks to Bidao Zenwuzu and Gong's comprehension of death. When this blade light appeared, it was filled with the annihilation of life. The bloody grass man felt the knife, and his whole body trembled. It roared, and countless wooden thorns suddenly flew out from its body, piercing Qin Yang like a pear blossom rain. But these wooden thorns were all annihilated by the blade light. Wherever they passed, they were chopped into pieces by the blade. The next moment, The cold abyss knife stabbed into the face of the bloody grass man fiercely. The bloody grass man made a strange cry and swept out with a mace in one hand. Qin Yang suddenly pulled out the cold abyss knife and blocked it. With a bang. Qin Yang was shocked back more than 10 steps. But he did not continue to do it, but looked at the bloody grass man. The power of suppressing evil mixed with the knife intent of death poked a hole in the face of the bloody grass man. And this hole is constantly spreading. The bloody grass man screamed, as if he was calling on some kind of power, to resist the power in his body. But at this time, Qin Yang came again with a knife. This time, the platinum knife light was dimmer than before, but it was full of desolate death. The bloody grass man howled wildly, but his body was constantly dismembered by the knife light. The limbs, body and even the head were cut off by Qin Yang's knife. Boom. Qin Yang stepped hard on the straw man's head. The huge straw man's head was corroded by the death knife and was fragile. It was directly exploded by this heavy stomping. The gloomy and evil aura shrouding the Lu mansion suddenly dissipated. This guy is getting more and more powerful. Zhao Zinmo knew that Qin Yang's strength could naturally deal with medium-sized ghost weapons. But he didn't expect it to be so simple. Chapter 248 Chaos. This is a medium-level ghost weapon. Not to mention the 3 flowers gathering at the top of the head. Even a warrior at the 5 key converging to the origin realm is enough. Only a Tangsuan warrior can come here to steadily suppress this medium-level ghost weapon. In other words, Qin Yang's current combat power may not be inferior to that of an ordinary Tangsuan warrior. You know, in this era when martial saints do not appear, Tangsuan warriors are the highest combat power. Let's go. This ghost weapon is considered to be solved. Qin Yang said lightly. At this time, Zheng Yuanchao, who had been waiting outside, also noticed the disappearance of the strange aura of the Lu mansion, and rushed in with his men. Deputy Chief Qin, are you all okay? Zheng Yuanchao asked quickly. No problem. The ghost weapon in the Lu mansion has been suppressed. You can burn the Lu mansion later. Qin Yang said casually. The bloody scarecrow was destroyed by him, and there may still be some residual evil power. It is better to burn it clean with a fire. No problem. Zheng Yuanchao did not dare to be careless about the problem of this medium-level ghost weapon. If this is not handled properly, it may be a disaster for the city. These finishing tasks were handed over to Zheng Yuanchao. Qin Yang and Zhao Zinmo left first. On the way back to the patrol department, I have read this grudge curse book. The sacrificial method is far less bloody than the sacrificial ceremony in Tupo last time. Why can it attract the arrival of a medium-level ghost weapon? Qin Yang asked curiously. I think it is still the problem of the forbidden art of isolating the world. Zhao Zinmo held the grudge curse book in his hand, his eyes deep. What does it mean? Qin Yang asked curiously. It's very simple. If it were in the past, I dare to guarantee that this grudge curse book can only summon the arrival of a low-level ghost weapon at most. But now it has summoned a medium-level ghost weapon. This shows that the hole in the forbidden art of isolating the world is too large. In the past, it could only summon the power of low-level ghost weapons. Now it may be able to summon medium-level ghost weapons. Zhao Zinmo said in a deep voice. He was just discussing this issue with Qin Yang in Lu's mansion. It seems that this case in Lu's mansion has been verified. If that's the case, I'm afraid it won't be long before a high-level ghost weapon appears. Qin Yang frowned. He had never come into contact with the power of a high-level ghost weapon, but that didn't stop him from imagining. He felt that Qi Yi's power at that time might be similar to that of a high-level ghost weapon, because he hadn't completed the ritual and turned into a ghost species. His own power was naturally far from that of a ghost species. So once a high-level ghost weapon appears, even a black warrior might not be able to deal with it, and only a martial saint could contend with it. But how long has it been since a martial saint appeared in this world? We can only leave it to fate. Zhao Zinmo said helplessly. The two returned to the sky patrol with heavy hearts. When Qin Yang thought of Zhao Zinmo's words, he felt the pressure doubled. He returned to the practice chamber to practice again. Host, Qin Yang Bidao Zen Wuzu and Gong, 2nd level, 356 over 1500, Yin Yang Life and Death Talisman Scripture, 8th level, Yin Talisman. 20 over 1500 Yang Talisman. 65 over 1500. Desolate C9 blades. Entry 687 thousandths. Wild thunder step. Entry 45 over 700. Evil dragon swallowing evil blade. Perfection. Extreme evil. I'm going to finish practicing Bidao Zen Wuzhu and Gong. I wonder if there is any news from Lenkang. Qin Yang looked at Bidao Zen Wuzhu and Gong and frowned slightly. When he chose this technique, he only got a fragment, only the first 3 levels. As for the 5 keys converging to the origin and the Tangsuan chapter, they are completely missing. But this technique was copied from Daewoo Imperial City, and Yangning Patrol Sky Division did not have a specific record. So when Lenkang returned to Daewoo Imperial City, Qin Yang specifically asked him to investigate for him. Where was this Bidao Zen Wuzhu and Gong discovered? But after a period of time, there was still no news. But Qin Yang could only wait. It would take some time to complete the practice of the 3 flowers gathering at the top of the head. After the Lu Mansion case, Yangning Prefecture was not peaceful. Instead, many strange things happened one after another. It was still a hot summer, but overnight, a snowstorm rolled up, freezing the rivers. Countless houses were crushed by the snow, and thousands of people were frozen to death on the streets. But a few days later, it became a hot summer again. The 4 seasons of the year seemed to complete a cycle within a few days. It was not only the abnormality of the season. The wild beasts in the mountains also became abnormally manic, constantly attacking passers-by, and even forming a group of beasts to attack major villages and towns, also causing countless deaths and injuries. As for the evil spirits, they appeared more frequently. The patrol of the sky was busy and still could not suppress them. Even Qin Yang had to come out of retreat and kept killing evil spirits in Yangning Prefecture. It was late at night. A charity cemetery more than 10 miles away from Yangning Prefecture. Boom. With a muffled sound, a figure was hit hard by Qin Yang and smashed a wall. The figure stood up with a roar. It was a rotten evil corpse with a green face and fangs. These days, travelers have been missing, and their hearts have been dug out. You are the one behind this. Qin Yang walked out of the charity cemetery and said lightly. The evil spirit roared, and turned into a black shadow again, and rushed towards Qin Yang. Qin Yang suddenly pulled out the Hineyuan knife. A dim platinum knife light full of desolate death fell. Puff. Under the bright moonlight, the evil spirit was cut into 2 halves by the Hineyuan knife. As the power of suppressing evil poured in, the evil spirit instantly turned into black ash. Another 500 contribution points. Qin Yang muttered to himself. Now the Yangning Sky Patrol Department has no chief, and the distribution of contribution points is decided by him and Shangwen Yun. But if Qin Yang wants to earn contribution points himself, he can only complete the tasks issued by the evil slaying department. Otherwise, as the deputy chief, he will only receive 500 contribution points as salary every month. After killing the evil corpse, Qin Yang quickly returned to the Sky Patrol Division. As soon as he went there, he was stopped by Wang Jiang. Deputy Chief Qin. Wang Jiang said with a smile. Tell me, where do you want me to go again? Qin Yang said helplessly. Recently, people in Qinggan Town have mysteriously disappeared one after another, and it is suspected that a ghost weapon has appeared. Please go there. Wang Jiang said hurriedly. Okay, I'll go there later. Qin Yang nodded. He also knew Wang Jiang's difficulties. After all, there are only so few people in the Sky Patrol Division now. Now ordinary evil tasks are all solved by the prison department. Only some urgent and difficult tasks will be sent to the evil killers. But even so, there is still a shortage of manpower. Wang Jiang, the head of the evil killer department, wants to do the tasks himself and doesn't want to care about the deployment of manpower. But Qin Yang naturally doesn't allow it. If Wang Jiang doesn't do it, then he will do these things. Then I'll wait for your news. Wang Jiang was too busy, and he left immediately after seeing Qin Yang agreed. Just when Qin Yang was about to go to Qinggan Town, I just happened to run into someone coming back from outside. Zhao Zinmo. This spiritual master looked a little tired. These days, the dozen spiritual masters of the Zuanling department were naturally all sent out. Qin Yang, come over and chat for a while. Zhao Zinmo saw Qin Yang and forced himself to cheer up. Chapter 249. Show up. Why do you look like you're going to die? Have you been dealing with a lot of evil tasks recently? Qin Yang followed Zhao Zinmo to a corner and asked casually. They were too busy these days and didn't have much time to meet and chat. You almost tired me to death. We spiritual masters are not warriors like you. How can we have such strong energy? Zhao Zinmo said helplessly. Then you should come back and rest for a few days this time. Just remember to stay away from Wang Jiang. Qin Yang smiled. Let's not talk about this for now. You have also noticed the abnormality these days. Zhao Zinmo whispered. Of course. The climate is capricious and the temperature changes drastically. The wild beasts in the mountains attack in groups. There are also many strange things. Qin Yang said in a deep voice. Now Yangning's city is also in turmoil because of these things, and rumors are everywhere. Some people say that this is the anger of God and a ceremony of offering sacrifices to the sky is needed. Others say that this is a sign of a major disaster and they need to be prepared. Some guys even took the opportunity to come out and pretend to be ghosts and collect money. For this reason, Qin Yang also specifically ordered the Zunming department to crack down on these swindlers and kill them if they find one. But people's lives are already difficult, and with these abnormal climates, beast attacks and other things, the people are becoming more pessimistic. The order of Yangning City seems to be collapsing in an irreversible direction. Have you ever thought about the reasons for these strange things? Zhao Zinmo asked. Is it related to the thing you told me before? Qin Yang frowned. What he was referring to was naturally the gradual corrosion of the forbidden technique of isolating the world by the void. For the strange phenomena that have occurred in these days, I can conclude that it is caused by the corrosion of the forbidden technique of isolating the world. You may not have discovered it yet, but as a spiritualist, I can feel that the spiritual energy between heaven and earth has become more vigorous than before. Zhao Zinmo said in a deep voice. Spiritual energy. Qin Yang frowned. The forbidden technique of isolating the world is a double-edged sword. Although it isolates the void, it also blocks the spiritual energy. Since the Great Qin Kingdom period, the spiritual energy of the world has begun to dry up and weaken. Without the spiritual energy, the spiritual masters and warriors will naturally. But these days, the spiritual energy has become abnormally vigorous, and all these signs show that the forbidden technique of isolating the world is losing its effectiveness. Zhao Zinmo said seriously. So fast? Qin Yang frowned slightly. He originally had more than 10 years. He didn't expect it to lose its effectiveness so quickly. Well, I didn't think about it. But the only good news is that the revival of spiritual energy will make it easier for spiritual masters and warriors to practice. At the same time, more geniuses with extraordinary talents will be born, and the ancient splendor will be restored. Zhao Zinmo nodded. Qin Yang was thoughtful. Zhao Zinmo said everything he wanted to say, so he said goodbye and went back to rest. Qin Yang adjusted his thoughts and hurried to Qinggan Town. Half a month later, the situation in Yangning Prefecture City became more and more deteriorating, and the public security problem became more and more serious. Governor Qin Fangluo went to the patrol department many times to find Qin Yang and Shangwen Yan, hoping that they would come forward to curb the exploitation of the 9 great families. After Qin Yang and Shangwen Yan discussed it, they asked Qin Fangluo to come forward and set up a banquet in Zuan Tower in the city, inviting the heads of the 9 great families to attend. The corruption of Yangning Prefecture City did not seem to affect the brilliant lights of Zuan Tower. After nightfall, the lights were bright. This night was even more exaggerated. Many luxurious carriages stopped in front of Zuan Tower, and the guards of the major families had nearly 1,000 people, all of whom were elite, surrounding Zuan Tower. Which big shot is coming? Such a scene in Zuan Tower naturally attracted many people to watch. Don't you know? The patrol department has made an appointment with the people of the 9 great families to meet at Zuan Tower tonight. A commoner who knew the situation said. These days, Yangning Prefecture City has become more and more chaotic, and it seems that the patrol department can't stand it anymore. Someone sighed. Will it work? When Chief Song was here, he couldn't suppress the 9 great families. Now that he's gone, will the 9 great families give face to the patrol department? Some people were not optimistic at all. Not necessarily. Deputy Chief Qin is a ruthless man. Someone else retorted. It's useless. A strong dragon can't suppress a local snake. Let's see what happens first. There's no point in arguing. Zheng Yuanxi stood at the highest point of Zuan Tower, looking at the dense crowd below, like ants, with a slightly depressed brow. This is a private room, and only people from the 9 great families can book it on weekdays. Brother Zheng, what do you think of Qin Yang inviting me here this time? What requirements will he make? Mo Xin, the current head of the Mo family, asked. The 9 great families suffered heavy losses in the Fuhei Marquis mansion, and most of the heads of the families died there. This also led to the current dominance of the Zheng family. It must be because of the recent riots in Yangning City. Shen Hui, the new head of the Shen family, said. He is the younger brother of Shen Sangxiu, with a head of grey and white hair, and an old and heavy look. It's just a little chaos. This Qin Yang is making a fuss. Another family head said. Perhaps, we can use this opportunity to threaten Qin Yang and reinsert our people into the Sky Patrol department. Shen Hui suddenly said. Brother Shen, what a good suggestion. Mo Xin agreed. For the people of the 9 great families, if they can re-enter the Sky Patrol department, it doesn't matter if they make some compromises. Of course, this depends on Qin Yang's attitude. Qin Yang is not so easy to give in. Zheng Yuanxi shook his head. Then see who needs who more. Tao Chen, the new head of the Tao family, sneered. He is Tao Ning's younger brother. Since taking office, he has been thinking about making some achievements. This negotiation may be the best opportunity. Zheng Yuanxi didn't say much. He also wanted to test Qin Yang's thoughts in his heart. After all, Yangning City is so chaotic now, maybe the other party will really back down. Time passed quietly. All the dishes have been served. But Qin Yang still didn't show up after the agreed time. This made several family heads look cold. But thinking of what he said just now, he could only hold back. I'm here. Zheng Yuanxi, who had been looking down, said lightly. Under the attention of everyone, Qin Yang finally showed up. This time, he came alone. Even Shang Wenyan didn't come. He wore a loose white shirt and didn't even bring the Hanyuan sword. Qin Yang walked into Zuan Tower with a relaxed look, came to the top floor, and pushed open the wing room. Everyone, I'm sorry, there are too many evil spirits that the Zunshan division has to deal with recently. I didn't check the time. Qin Yang said with a smile. Deputy Qin is too polite. If we had known that Deputy Qin was so busy, we wouldn't have come. Mo Xin said sarcastically. Oh, then you can leave now. Qin Yang smiled. Mo Xin's face rose. He wanted to encourage the rest of the family to follow him, but found that no one looked at him. Chapter 250 Suppression. The 9 great families have always had their own calculations. Especially this time. It would be better if Mo Xin left. Later, when discussing the quota for entering the Sky Patrol division, his family would have more people. Why not? After thinking about this, Mo Xin smiled thick-skinnedly. Deputy Chief Qin is joking. I'd better stay and continue eating. Then don't talk so much nonsense. Qin Yang said lightly. As he said that, he sat down with a big sword and a golden horse, and did not move his chopsticks, but looked at the 9 family heads in front of him. The eyes of the 9 family heads also fell on Qin Yang. No one spoke, and a huge pressure was formed invisibly. These days, you have also seen the chaos in Yangning Prefecture. Qin Yang said calmly. Of course I have seen it. Recently, natural disasters have occurred one after another, and evil disasters have continued. Our 9 great families have also contributed money and effort to maintain Yangning Prefecture. Unfortunately, the effect does not seem to be very obvious. Zheng Yuanxi sighed. Indeed, my Shen family has already spent hundreds of thousands of silver. We distribute porridge to all the restaurants and inns every day. Shen Hui said the same thing. The other family heads also said their own things. Anyway, they have already contributed money and effort, and you, Qin Yang, can't say anything to me. In this case, how did I hear that? This Yangning Prefecture city has become so chaotic now, and you 9 great families have contributed half of it? Qin Yang said with a smile. I wonder who Deputy Chief Qin heard it from? Tao Chen narrowed his eyes. The topic seemed to have a gunpowder smell when it came to this point. It doesn't matter who you heard it from. What's important is it true or false? Qin Yang smiled. Of course it's false. Deputy Chief Qin, don't be deceived by some villains. Our 9 great families have taken root in Yangning Prefecture City for many years, and naturally we want Yangning Prefecture City to become better. Shen Hui said in a deep voice. That's fine. I heard that there are many gangs in the city recently, running rampant on the streets, specializing in oppressing the people. Why don't you 9 great families eliminate these gangs first? Qin Yang said with a smile. Sir, this is the government's business. We can't interfere. Shen Hui said indifferently. That's right. Unfortunately, Governor Qin told me that he can't do anything about it. Since you 9 great families don't want to do anything about it, then I, the patrol of the sky, will do it. Qin Yang said with a smile. Sir, aren't you afraid that Yangning Prefecture will become more chaotic if you do this? Zheng Yuan's eyes fixed. He knew that Qin Yang was playing crazy. Didn't Qin Yang know that the forces behind these gangs were the 9 great families? It's chaotic, so be it. What's the big deal? Anyway, it will be ruined sooner or later if it goes on like this. It's better to be ruined sooner. Qin Yang said indifferently. There was a sudden silence in the private room. Zheng Yuan's eyes flickered, and he suddenly smiled and said, then we will wait for Deputy Chief Qin to eliminate these gangs. No problem. Then I'm in a hurry, so I'll take action now. You guys eat slowly. Qin Yang smiled, stood up and left the private room. After he left, Mo snorted coldly. Why are you pretending? I really don't believe he dares to do this. If Yangning Prefecture City is in chaos, the Sky Patrol will not benefit either. Qin Yang has no reason to do these things. Not necessarily. We overlook something. Qin Yang is not Song Yechen. Song Yechen will not compromise with us for the sake of the people of Yangning Prefecture City. But Qin Yang is young and hot-tempered with a perverse and cruel personality. He may not compromise. Zheng Yuan said indifferently. He does it on the first day, and we do it on the 15th. If the gang is really cleared, we will let Yangning Prefecture City be in chaos. Tao Chen said coldly. So if Yangning Prefecture City is in chaos, will his Sky Patrol's interests be damaged, or will we be more damaged? Zheng Yuan asked. No one answered his question. Now Qin Yang's strength is the only one in Yangning Prefecture City. No one can stop him from doing what he wants. If he really insists on doing it, even if both sides lose in the end, the biggest loss will still be their 9 great families. Then wait and see. Shen Hui said coldly. This is a game. Of course, they would not give up so easily. They wanted to see if Qin Yang really didn't care about the lives of the people in Yangning Prefecture. After Qin Yang left Zuan Tower, he went all the way to the prefectural government office. Deputy Chief Qin, how did the talk go? Prefect Qin Fangluo had been waiting for a long time. What do you think? Qin Yang smiled slightly. These termites really deserve to die. Qin Fangluo scolded. No hurry. Just do as we said before. Qin Yang said lightly. Deputy Chief Qin. Once he takes action. If the 9 great families don't give in, how will we end it? Qin Fangluo hesitated. Prefect Qin, do you know why you can't beat the 9 great families in these years? It's because they have grasped your weakness and know that you will only give in everything. They will naturally push their luck. Qin Yang smiled slightly and said, even if they don't give in, it will just be a big chaos. But, many people will die. Qin Fangluo whispered. How can we avoid death every day? If we want to avoid death, we can only be more ruthless than them. Qin Yang said calmly. Then do as Deputy Chief Qin said. Qin Fangluo gritted his teeth and said. That's fine. Leave it to me. Qin Yang laughed. When he walked out of the state government office, a figure was already waiting outside. It was the new director of the Zunming department, Cui Fenglin. Deputy Chief. Cui Fenglin clasped his fists. Have all the people been sent out? Qin Yang asked. Just waiting for your order. Cui Fenglin said softly. Then let's get started. Be more ruthless. Otherwise those guys won't be afraid. Qin Yang smiled. I understand. Cui Fenglin clasped his fists. By the way, you told me which gang is in trouble? Qin Yang asked. The Iron Flag gang is backed by the Zheng family, and the gang leader is a master of the 3 flowers gathering at the top. Cui Fenglin said. Leave it to me. Qin Yang nodded. After saying goodbye to Cui Fenglin, Qin Yang headed towards the base of the Iron Flag gang. Along the way, he did not hide his tracks, and walked openly on the street. The people on the street might not recognize who he was, but there were many spies following him. Qin Yang did not care. Soon, he came to a courtyard with a magnificent style and big red lanterns. A big iron flag was inserted at the door, and several big men stood beside it, looking majestic. Seeing Qin Yang coming over, the guard frowned and said, "What are you doing here?" Qin Yang scratched his head and said apologetically, "I should be here to kill people today." Bang bang bang. The faces of the big men changed, but they lost consciousness in the next second. Their bodies were hit by a huge force and flew into the base of the Iron Flag gang. Qin Yang smiled slightly and walked into the Iron Flag gate with a swagger. The entire Iron Flag gate was alarmed, and dozens of gang members holding weapons rushed out. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.